For years, they controlled her, but now she's the power. The main character, reading the book, says that the ending upset her, because it is a fantasy novel inspired by 19th century England. The book the girl is reading is called The Queen's Husband, and the main male character, who she really liked at the end, met his death. He was a devoted servant of Queen Hergé and devoted all his strength to satisfying her desires and bringing her not only benefit but also pleasure. But as a reward for his devotion, he received only a cup of poison, and then he breathed his last and plunged into eternal darkness, and thus left this world. The main character, having read this, does not understand what the point of his death is and wonders if it was possible to show at least a little compassion for him. After all, she believes that everything would have been much better if she had been the main character. The little girl decided to write everything that she was missing in the work, and then began to type and sew fan. Fic about the Queen's husband appeared. After all, she thinks that she can change his world. The young lady thinks that the main character is made too pathetic and so decides to fill in his shortcomings with her imagination. She wants to make him a man she can rely on. Readers appreciated her provocative fanfiction, but not the author of the original work. After all, he was unhappy with what the final result was. He wrote to Lady Edwin that he was the author of the novel The Queen's Consort, and she should have asked permission before publishing her fanfic on Jokar. The main character read the messages, and after a moment, her creation suddenly became cloudy, and rather she felt some strangeness and she felt crushed. The woman screams and says that this old junk can hardly be called a carriage because it is uncomfortable for her to sit in, and she thinks that this carriage is old and useless, which reminds her of her father. The young lady doesn't understand why she felt crushed, and her stepmother asks why she is staring and thinks it is rude. Viscountess Catherine was a typical stepmother. She asks the girl if she likes bad words about her so-called father. This woman was always dissatisfied, and also loved her daughters very much. The main character is a typical stepdaughter who suffers because of her. She says that if she doesn't like this old carriage, then let her learn to spend money wisely, because she thinks that she doesn't earn this money, but only squanders it. Henry's younger sister asks why not buy a new carriage instead of another dress. After all, the dress may wear out, but the carriage will be useful for the family. Hearing this, the woman screams and objects, saying that she will never do this and that they shouldn't even hope for it. After all, it's important for her to look good, and for that, she needs beautiful outfits. And then he reminds her that she has already said that she needs a new dress in the near future. Mother says that she is also silent about the jewelry that suits her very well, but she does not have it. The main character realizes that their family can't even afford a new carriage, and her stepmother spends money left and right. Eldest daughter Candace asks her mother why she is arguing, and then tells her to spit because she thinks it is a waste of time. The youngest daughter thought about how she hadn't had any new dresses for a long time. However, of course she would like to have at least one, since her friends have some and she doesn't. And compared to them, she looks like a country bumpkin. The woman reminds them not to forget that there will soon be a ball organized by the Duke of Bristol, and for this, she would like her girls to look good. The stepmother claims that he is the most eligible bachelor in the kingdom who is looking for a bride, and therefore believes that she should dress up her girls and send him there. The main character understands that of course her half-sisters need suitable life partners, and this reminds me of the plot of many novels. But she does not want to participate in this because she has other plans. The girl believes that this is not just a novel, but her beloved husband, the Queen, who listens only to her. The lady with pink hair thought that her stepsisters could only dream because she knew that this most eligible bachelor had no time for marriage. Edwin is one of the most influential people in the kingdom, who dedicated himself entirely to serving Queen Hergé. But in the end, he was betrayed and met his end. The doomed protagonist was betrayed by his own queen. And the girl realizes that this is her favorite character, in whose honor she even wrote a fanfic. The girl understands that now the very thought of him scares her, because this handsome, sexy main character is about to finish her off. Wentworth family, to which she now belongs, was hardly mentioned in history, and her father, the Viscount, rebelled against Queen Hergé and was finished off by Edwin, her husband and right hand. This was the only time their family was mentioned in the story, and so at first the little girl did not understand where she was and who she was. The Viscountess asks if they have arrived yet, and the daughter thinks that it looks like they are still in the forest. But the carriage stopped. The lady screams and says that they need to buy so many things today, and she asks what the coachman is doing and then tells her stepdaughter to go out and see. The main character thought that she should be calmer because she doesn't like being in the same space with these people. They think that this is probably for the best. The girl asks what happened and why they stopped. And then she saw a very beautiful carriage, and she became interested in who it belonged to. The man puts on gloves and asks if she is the owner of this mare, and then looks at the girl. At this time, the little girl thought that he was tall and elegant, and it was immediately obvious that he was a nobleman of high rank. The young lady claims that everything is correct. Her name is Henri, and at that time she thought that he was looking at her too intently, because he had not even introduced himself and considered it rude. The girl asks if she can find out his name, and the gentleman claims that she is in heat and her horse wants his stallion. Hearing this, the main character looked at him in surprise, and he asked if they could take her aside so that he could pass. The man claims that his horse is an elite breed, and therefore believes that he cannot have sex with just anyone. Hearing this, the little girl was surprised, and she became interested in whether he really said this out loud, because he thinks it's vulgar. The girl thought about what she wanted to scratch, and then asked the coachman if it was true. Handel says what he thinks, but recently they tried to teach Merlin, but she kept refusing the stallion, and that's why nothing worked out between them. And even when everything was swollen, she stubbornly stood her ground. The coachman explains that since then she has kept everything to herself, and now she is even more excited than she should be. The main character does not understand how he dares to speak about her girl like that. And then she says that everything is fine, and if Merlin wants it, then why not? Henry comes closer to the horse and says that one shouldn't judge by first impressions, because he believes that the inner world of many men does not correspond to their appearance. The girl says that just because he looks sophisticated doesn't mean he's worth anything, and then says that he can be downright unbearable and asks if she understands her. Milady claims that he may be an ordinary playboy, but in any case, the most important thing is that she honestly and boldly spoke about her feelings. Henry tells the master that their Merlin was a bit rude, and they will immediately step aside, and then asks if he needs anything else. The gentleman smiled, and then said that he thought she had misunderstood him, and therefore he would like to clarify the situation. The man reports that their Kiristin, unlike others, is an exquisite and noble stallion of royal origin, and is on a completely different level from the ordinary horses that you can meet on the road. The gentleman claims that he has a professional security guard, special food, and premium class housing. Owners of valuable horses from all over the world line up to let their mare spend the night with him. The Duke says he doubts his path with Merlin was ever meant to cross, which is unfortunate. The girl thinks that he must be a very busy person, but he still personally looks after his pets, and therefore says that he is pedantic and responsible. The man replies that it is his duty as the owner, and believes that she should also show generosity towards her loved ones. At this time, the coachman, watching his masters, wanted someone to stop them. The stepmother screams and turns to Henri and asks why she is taking so long. And at that time, the girl thought about those annoying people again. When the Viscountess saw this gentleman, she realized that he was not only handsome, but also rich. The gentleman says that they are too late, and therefore asks to forgive him, and then leaves. The mother asks what just happened and who this man is, and the girl replies that it doesn't matter because in any case he didn't reveal his name. The main character understands that this worries her, and she hopes that this idiot accidentally steps on horse manure because she is unlikely to see him again. 2 weeks later, the man gave the girl a letter stating that he was the owner of Kirstin and wished to purchase Merlin. And therefore, the hostess must be sure that the payment will be more than generous. And he brought all the necessary documents, and therefore suggests to get acquainted with them properly and not to rush. The stepmother asks in surprise if they really want to pay them so much for just one horse. The Viscountess thought that for this money, she could buy a new carriage and 5 horses and still have some left over. The main character remembered the gentleman and realized that he wanted to buy Merlin. The stepmother asks if she wants to say that the sender of this letter is the man they saw on the day their carriage stopped. The assistant reports that the owner also asked to tell her not to worry about Merlin's condition, because he guarantees that he will take good care of her. The woman says with delight that his owner is very generous, and the girl claims that she will not sell her. The Viscountess screams and asks the handwriting if she is in her right mind, and the assistant asks if he can find out the reason for the refusal. At this time, the main character thought that he looked at her from above and even called her a mare, and now he wanted to buy something. The little girl understands that he didn't even honor them with his presence, but simply sent his butler, and she doesn't care about it. The girl doesn't understand how she can trust him after all this, because she doesn't know where the guarantee is that he will really take care of her. The assistant claims that a gentleman like Kirsten would be an ideal partner for Merlin, and that she would not want to reject him, and asks if he is right. Henry thinks that he continues to talk about how prestigious their horses are, and then says that only Merlin is not just a horse, but she is like a little sister to her. The little girl claims that no amount of money would make her sell out a member of her family, especially to someone who hasn't even introduced himself to her. The main character says that if his owner comes here in person and begs to sell her, then maybe she will think about it. The butler says that he will definitely convey her words to him, and at that time, he thought that they would simply finish him off and then leaves. The stepmother looked out the window and said that they couldn't just let him go, and then asked her daughter if she had completely lost her mind. The woman thinks that this money could go towards her sister's dowry, but she didn't even think about it, and the little girl claims that if he really needs this horse so urgently, he will come himself, and she is sure of it. The Viscountess says that a man with such wealth would never bother to travel to the god-forsaken countryside for the sake of some horse. Henry believes that, given that he is going to pay a fortune for her, he is quite capable of such a desperate act, and then asks what his mother thinks. The woman thought that this girl was impudent, but she became interested in whether this gentleman would really come. At this time, the Duke claims that he sent his assistant on an errand, and then asks that all he did was deliver the message to him. The gentleman asks if he is sure he is going to continue calling himself his butler, Albert. The assistant thinks he has no excuse. The Duke says that Kirsten has been acting restless and screaming for 2 weeks straight, and therefore assumes that it is impossible that the mare is also okay. The gentleman thinks that this is just stubbornness, or that she wants to get something more out of the situation. But she understands that if everything is left as is, Christina's health will suffer. The man understands that the situation is serious, and then says that this girl is simply something, because there are no options and he will have to come in person. The Duke says that he must not appear unprepared, because he understands that he must look very good. The next day, the maid informs Miss that the gentleman who introduced himself as Kirsten's master has arrived. The main character looked out the window and thought that he had indeed made his way to them. And then she quickly got dressed and went down to the hall. The gentleman thinks that his sudden visit must have discouraged them, and therefore he asks for forgiveness. The Viscountess suggests not to worry, because last time he left without even saying hello, and it was a real shame. Madame says that now she can finally accept him as a guest, which makes her happy. Candace has been watching the guy all this time and realized that he is simply incredibly handsome. The Viscountess says that she would call it written fate, and then asks if it is not so. And at this time, the main character thought that her mother was clearly enjoying herself because she was thinking of marrying him to her daughter. The gentleman says that he appreciates their warm welcome because he traveled all night without rest to get here as soon as possible. The man says that as she insisted, he came in person. And at that moment, the girl thought that he had just smirked at her. The gentleman asks if she is not happy with his proposal, and also wonders if he is not attractive enough for her. Hearing this, Madame, screaming, objects and says that, of course not, because she thinks that Henri is too picky, and she does not agree with her. The main character thought that before this, he had behaved narcissistically and arrogantly, but now he himself came to them and considered it ridiculous. The girl looked at her sisters and did not understand what was so beautiful about him that she admired him so much. After all, they did not take their eyes off him. The man asks if he can then look at Merlin. Hearing this, the lady, surprised, asks if he wants to go to the stable. Henry tells the gentleman that he must be a very busy man, and he didn't even take off his gloves. The Duke reports that he felt that the miss found his presence here inconvenient, and therefore he would like to finish his business as soon as possible. And that is why he did not take them off. Hearing this, the girls ask him not to hurry and stay here as long as he wishes. And Mother informs that she has already ordered one more portion of dinner to be prepared. The man says that if they don't mind, he will stay because he still has some free time and he wants to take a better look at the horse. Madame explains that no one has come to visit them for a long time, and therefore it is wonderful that he is here. The Viscountess says something about how this is a remote, quiet place. They rarely have the chance to entertain such pleasant gentlemen. Catherine asks the guest if he likes the food. After all, their cook tried very hard. The man reports that it is not bad. The main character says that if you think about it, she still doesn't know his name. The girl understands that after her words, he only looks but does not answer, and then says that if it is so hard for him to share, then asks if Christina can call him father. The Duke agrees, and then asks if she really wants to be friends, and calls the girl Merlin's mother. The young lady thinks it is possible and calls him father, and her sister asks in surprise if Henri is really going to play this game. The man says that since they have finished eating, he asks if he can ask him to take them to the stables. The little girl says that, of course, she will be happy to see her father off. On the way to change into riding shoes, the girl thought that the first meeting was the same. Henry wondered why he was dodging requests to say his name. After all, she didn't even know his name. Candace. When she saw her younger sister, she was surprised and asked why she wasn't in the stables yet. She also wondered where that gentleman was and why she was still here. The young lady explains that she just wanted to change her clothes, and sister shows her the gloves. The girl asks in surprise why she has them. Candace explains that they were hanging out of Mrs. Branson's room, and she took them. The sister says that they are ownerless and have no owner, and therefore she can do with them as she pleases. And then she asks if she is trying to be cheeky. Henry suggests to his sister to watch her words, and then informs her that it is not Miss Branson, but the late Viscountess. The girl asks who told her that they have no owner, because they belong to her mother, and therefore are now hers. The main character claims that Candace has no connection whatsoever with the Viscountess, and therefore believes that she has no right to claim them. Hearing this, Candace got angry and then kicked her sister down the stairs. At this time, the girl realized that she was falling. Suddenly, the young lady was picked up by a gentleman, and she looked at him in surprise, again not knowing since when he was there. The man asks to forgive him for interfering, and then says that if she does not want him to stay here until tomorrow, then she should hurry. The little girl says that she will quickly change and wait for him downstairs. On the way to the stable, the main character thought that it would be very awkward to be seen in such a situation by a barely familiar person. The gentleman asked the girl if the Merlin is a gift from her late mother. Hearing this, the little girl is surprised, and the Duke says, "What about her lace gloves?" She says she thinks she said that earlier through his butler. The girl says that Marilyn is a horse that she loves dearly because she is like a family member to her. The little girl thought that she couldn't understand this man because he asked such personal things so easily. The main character believes that in the end, he seems like a gentleman, but he is also a rude person. Suddenly the man stops, and she doesn't understand that this time he blocked her path. The gentleman looked at the girl carefully and thought that it was somehow strange because this woman's voice, for some reason it seemed to him that he had heard it before. The man understands that he has definitely never seen her before and thinks that it is just his imagination. But still, it seems that she is familiar to him. The little girl claims that he continues to stand in her way and does so silently. And then she says that it is a little annoying. The gentleman asked for forgiveness for causing her inconvenience, and at that time she took advantage of the opportunity and went on. The main character looked at the black stallion and thought that up close he really was a handsome man, and she assumes that her horse Merlin definitely went for broke. The Duke asks Geoffrey how Kirsten is. The assistant says he thinks he's a little worried. Kirsten's personal handler and trainer. He says the horse is excited about the mare, and then explains that he meant Marilyn, a Merlin somewhere nearby, and that is why he is so excited. The gentleman reflects that, as he thought, the other horse is in the same condition. And this is not just a meeting. Henry turns to the gentleman and calls him Kirsten's father, and the man asks her to continue. The girl says that people can certainly say that there is nothing more important than love, and then asks if the wedding is the most important thing. After all, there are quite a lot of arguments about this. Honeymoon, plans for children, thoughts about how much each party should contribute towards the dowry. The little girl explains that she means that the parents shouldn't come to a mutual agreement first, and asks if that's true. The man says yes, of course, and so he has prepared all the necessary papers, and then asks Albert to show them. The gentleman says that before this, and at that time, the girl thought that he was really going to play by his own rules at her house. The man reveals that Kirsten's lineage goes back to the royal Habsburg family, and that he has been the horse of kings for generations. He thought his noble lineage was worthy of mention now. Henry asks, surprised, if he is trying to say that his bloodline must be preserved. He says that, as expected, She has the insight worthy of a Merlin mother. The little girl tells her father that there is only one thing she wants most of all, and this is so that her Marilyn does not spend her days in tears, yearning for the fleeting dream of one single night. The gentleman claims that Kirsten is a noble creature who knows honor and loyalty, and therefore believes that she should not worry. The main character thought that he was not going to leave her immediately after mating, and then she says that she will now run her eyes, and therefore suggests waiting. The girl read that they wanted to lend them a carriage. After all, she thought that the terms of the contract would be vague, but they became even more generous than she expected. The contract stated that they would send them horses in exchange for the Merlin for free. And then he says that they took into account that they would need a horse and also offered a carriage, and so he thanks. The gentleman says that she shouldn't even worry, since they will cover the costs of maintaining the staff and then for raising the foal. Henry wonders if the father will be the owner of the foal. He assures that, of course he will, and let the girl talk. The little one says she has one more request for them, and she would like the foal to leave the Merlin when she is ready. The girl says that she hopes that they will let her spend as much time with her child as she wants, as she would not like to separate them too soon. The gentleman says he will do everything as she says, and the lady thanks him for his understanding and calls him father. Henry comes closer to the stallion and asks him to take care of her Merlin. Then she strokes his muzzle. The assistant says that they will prepare food for the horses. The main character asks the coachman to take care of her horse, and at that time, the man thought that she was just a stupid scoundrel who first acts and then thinks. However, the conditions she put forward were surprisingly logical, and her affection for this horse does not seem to be just pretending. The Duke realizes that he was wrong because this girl showed herself to be very smart, and he didn't even guess that she could say such a thing. At this time, the stepmother does not understand what can be talked about for so long in that stinking stable. And then she turns to her girls and suggests that they be on guard, because such a gentleman drops in on them every day. Eunice, hearing this, thought about what had started, because now her mother would say nasty things about the owner of the stable. The woman screams and claims that she could just quickly settle everything and finally return to the house, and then claims that this girl is just an impudent fox. The Viscountess thinks that the stepdaughter acts as if she is not interested in men, but in the end, it turns out to be a completely different story. Candace remembers what she did on the stairs and reflects that she did it on purpose to quarrel with her and make her look bad in front of that gentleman. The sister doesn't understand what to do now, and the mother asks what's wrong with her darling. She explains that because of this Henry, she will never get married. The Viscountess turns to Eunice and asks how she can continue to chew while her sister is ill. The girl saw that Henri had left the stable, and she said that the negotiations were over. The main character turns to the maid Barbara, and she, surprised, asks her mistress how she can be of service to her. The girl, screaming, tells her to hurry up and send someone to the city for a doctor, and also tell them to do it quickly. The Viscountess asks in surprise what happened, because she doesn't understand why the doctor is there. Candace asks who was hurt. The main character, together with the gentleman, looked at the stable staff and thought that everything had gone downhill. After all, when the stallion and the horse got close, they somehow unsuccessfully pushed the men away, who fell to the ground and were badly injured. And so, as a result, it was necessary to send for a doctor. The assistant tells the gentleman that there is not a single coachman on site at the moment, and it will not be possible to leave until tomorrow morning. The man claims that the village is small, so there are not many people who know how to drive horses, and if you look for them, the gentleman says that he understands, and in that case, he will stay overnight and monitor Jeffrey's condition. Henry asks the doctor if both coachmen are okay. He says they are okay, because he did everything he could, and fortunately, both have only minor fractures. The doctor tells her that their bones will grow back together in 3 weeks. The little girl, hearing this, says that it is a relief for her to hear this. The gentleman says that, given the circumstances, he asks her to look after her servants for a while. The main character turns to the doctor and says that he should also stay the night, because she will prepare a room for him too, and then asks him to look after them until they are fully recovered. The doctor says he will do everything in his power. The girl says that if she needs anything, she should ask the maid. The Viscountess turns to the guest and suggests that he stay longer, and he thinks that just watching this dramatic duet is disgusting. Henry tells them not to worry about taxes and wages, as she will send a small compensation to their family, and then asks for forgiveness, as it all happened because of Marilyn. The girl says that this is not such a big mansion, but asks to feel at home, because she thinks that at this rate she will recover faster. At this time, the man thought that she had decided to support such a simple servant like him. The young lady wants to have a good rest and wishes them good night and then leaves. The gentleman had been watching her all this time and thought that this was strange or just unusual. He realized that he had never had to deal with such girls before. A man enters the servants' room, and they are surprised and want to get up. He suggests that they not get up unless, of course, they want to add more problems to him. The gentleman turns to the coachman and asks if his name is Handel. He then says that it looks like they will need a coachman for the journey to Wentworth for a while. The man asks if the servant has any urgent business and if he is planning any long trips. The servant reports that the mistress and the young ladies were planning to attend a ball being held by the Duke of Bristol, which is quite far from here in the east. Hearing this, the gentleman smiled because he understood what was being said. And then he said that this ball is worth trying. At this time, the main character thought that she was terribly tired, and walking along the corridor, she saw that the door to the room and Eunice was open. And then she decided to look in there. The little girl wondered why she was still awake at this hour, and then she heard her sister's voice. The girl claims that she will not go to the ball and asks if it is clear to her. And even if her mother tells her to go, she must refuse. Eunice plaintively asks how she can refuse. Candace offers to scream and say that she feels ill. Big Sister thinks that if they are seen together, she will die of shame, and so she asks to do her a favor in a sisterly way. Hearing this, the main character thought that she was pouring out her negativity on Eunice again. It is not surprising that she is furious because of what happened to her earlier. Candace screams, tells her sister that if she dares to say she's coming, she'll rip her dress to shreds. Henry comes into the room and says that, to be honest, she is really a disgrace here. Hearing this, the older sister asks in surprise what she just said. The girl explains that she was just talking to herself, and Candace angrily screams that she literally announced it to the entire neighborhood. The little girl asks if she did the same thing when she humiliated Eunice. At this time, the girls were talking in raised tones, and the Duke became interested in what they were talking about. Candace looked at her sister and thought that she was a cheeky slut, and this time she exposed her true nature. She starts crying and asks Henry how she can treat her like that just because she is an unwanted guest in this house. After all, she is even upset by the fact that she is her sister and asks if that is true. The sister says that she knows she is picking on her because she doesn't like her. The young lady asks in surprise what nonsense she is talking about. Meanwhile, the Lord was watching them. The main character claims that she constantly bullies Eunice, her own sister, and now she is so upset because she accidentally hurt her feelings. Candace, screaming, claims that Eunice is her real sister, and that's different. Anna is a fake, and so she suggests showing at least a little respect. The little girl asks if she sees that she just confirmed that she doesn't see her as a family member. Then she asks who else is freeloading. Henry reminds her that she buys 5 new dresses every month, and then asks her to do her a favor and leave her mother's room, because even her patience has its limits. The sister asks how she dares to snap back, and then says that she will tell her father everything when he returns, and leaves. At this time, the main character thought that no matter how old she was, she would still complain like a little child. The girl realizes she needs to sleep, and then says goodnight to Eunice. The little sister thought that was pretty damn cool. Eunice saw the gentleman and was very surprised, and at the same time she could not say a word, because she understood that he heard them, and this made her feel uncomfortable. Film. And at this time, the man thought that it was becoming more and more interesting. After all, she had enough courage for a company of soldiers. After all, what kind of girls does he like? The guy understands that the upcoming ball will not be as boring as usual, and therefore he would like that day to come soon. Several days have passed since the main character came to this world. Every morning she reads the newspaper and does not understand why. The story of the Queen's consorts unfolds in 19th century England. The girl realizes that it does not fully coincide with the real history of that era. Therefore, in order to better understand this world and know what stage of history she is at, the lady carefully reads the news in the newspaper every day. The little girl realizes that she has been completely absorbed in the Merlin story for the last few days. That's why she missed a couple of days and the papers have piled up. Handel and Geoffrey's recovery is going well. The boys are getting better and are improving every day. Unexpectedly, the man never left, but stayed in their house. Thanks to this, Candace finally calmed down. The main character understands that because they are in the same house, they constantly bump into each other. And to be honest, it is terribly inconvenient. The little girl reads in the newspaper that a special exhibition of the Royal Academy of Arts is being organized, and she doesn't understand whether it's really time already. Henri believes that she can't just sit there because she urgently needs to change clothes and prepare the crew. The girl thought for a moment and realized that she had neither a horse nor a coachman at the moment. She thought about simply borrowing a carriage, an estate, and going there and back. The little girl understands that there is little time left to see the exhibition, and she does not have money for a long stay in the capital. The main character wants to see every movie this year too, and she doesn't know what to do because she has many desires that require capital. The gentleman reports that due to the coachman's injury, as he promised, he urgently rented a carriage. The girls looked at this work of art and thought that it was very chic and steeply expensive. Candace says that the carriage is very beautiful because it has an elegant, cozy interior, and then says that they were just about to go to the Roses and Hounds. The girls got inside the carriage and thought about how dazzlingly white it was and the rose gold frames. They realized that this was the latest fashion trend. The main character wondered how much it cost. The man said that if she didn't like something, she should let him know and they would replace everything. The young lady claims that this is more than enough. After all, thanks to them, Handel and Jeffrey will be able to recover faster. And then thanks her father for his help. At this time, the girl thought that now she would be able to calmly visit the exhibition because she wanted it so much. The man says that in any case, he only planned to rent it for 10 days, and he thought, offers to get in and go wherever the ladies want. The gentleman reports that he believes that 10 days will be more than enough to compensate for the injury to their coachman. Henry smiled and asked if it was true. And at that moment, she thought that he was stingy. The young lady says that she will probably have to make a rather awkward request of the victims and ask them to recover in 10 days. The assistant says no way, and then suggests that she feel free to use it whenever it's convenient because everything is fine, because the gentleman likes to joke as if he were serious. The guest announces that he is now heading back and offers to take care of Christina. Henry suggests that he not worry about it since the carriage is more important to them than people. The Viscountess says they can stay a little longer if they want. However, the man says it's time for them to go, and thanks for everything. The assistant turns to the gentleman and says that he seems to be in a good mood today, and he hasn't seen him like this for a long time. Hearing this, the Duke thought that he had just smiled, and the assistant explains that this is not the point. The man then asks why he decided so. He explains that before leaving, the gentleman joked with Miss and asks if that is true. After all, he usually does not bother to talk to women. The Duke asks if what he said sounded like a joke, and the assistant asks in surprise, "Isn't that so, since the rental period for the carriage was not specified?" The gentleman says that, if not, then he suggests forgetting about it, and then suggests thinking about whether it is possible to postpone the point. Hearing this, Skrikivaya's assistant claims that this way he will completely break off relations with Madame, and asks if he wrote a letter about his unwillingness to marry. The secretary claims that if he also cancels the ball, she will be furious. The man asks Alberto who his master is, and also wonders if this is his mother. The assistant objects and says that Madame has made a huge contribution to the organization of the ball, and then asks if he might have reasons to avoid marriage. The Duke says that he has simply been sick of women since childhood. Alberto asks when it started and if anything happened that caused his dislike. The man explains that since he was 4, there has been no event that has caused this, and then he asks if that sounds like a joke too. Alberto smiles and says, "No way." And at that moment, he thinks that it looks like some naughty girl gave him a dressing down. The assistant says that, as a person who must continue the family line, it would be better to forget about the trauma of an unsuccessful childhood romance. At this time, the gentleman thought that, to be precise, no one would believe him anyway, and therefore he simply does not talk about it. The man thinks it's better when someone like Albert simply voices his opinion. Madame tells the gentleman to just get married already, and do it at least for the sake of not, because he is already 24. Mother says that he will understand when he lives it. That feeling is not the main thing. The guy thought that this is exactly why he does not want to get married. The man understands that he can't put off getting married any longer because he needs to find a suitable partner, and it doesn't matter who she is as long as she matches his interests. The next day, somewhere in the capital, the main character, walking down the street, collects the glances of men who admire her beauty. The little girl thought that she came here this year too. After all, her beautiful and precious masterpieces which she will see. The main character looked at the exhibition with delight, looking at the newspaper, and thought that it was very beautiful there. The men said that this girl with pink hair was a beauty, and she was so charming. But she came here alone without an escort. The gentlemen think that young girls in their day have no sense of shame at all. Hearing this, the little girl looked angrily in their direction. She doesn't understand what difference it makes that she's wandering around here alone. After all, she understands that there's no one in the capital who could judge her anyway. The only good thing in this world is the opportunity to see the masterpieces of the great masters of this era in person. Henry hopes that today she will be able to find a truly famous work, and so she watched each painting, and then carefully studied it. Suddenly, the little girl saw the picture and stared at it, and the man standing behind her asks if it is Perseus and Andromeda. When the young lady looked back, she saw a familiar black-haired man and asked how her father ended up here. The man quietly says that he is her father, and that is why she suggests that she address him so slightly. The girl asks then, why doesn't he tell her his name? Henry says she is surprised to meet him here, and then asks if he likes the paintings. The gentleman says that his mother loves them more. The little girl asks if he came with her. The boy says that he came here alone to buy a painting. The man thought that she would be unhappy if he just bought a random painting. The lady said that she was very sorry, and he thought that he was saying something that he didn't even mean. A gentleman asks a girl if she likes the painting. She says that she doesn't really just know it. The little girl thought that she remembered it from the exam in her past life. And then she asks if this painting is famous. The lady says that the story is about a hero who saved a princess who was given as a sacrifice. He thinks that it is true, and that the artist seems to be especially fond of this princess. Henry wonders who wouldn't like a beautiful trophy. After all, he knows that she is a kind and beautiful princess who was sacrificed because her mother offended the gods. In the end, by royal decree, she was given in marriage to the hero who saved her and bore him 6 children. And her whole life is told in the passive voice. The girl wondered if this woman of that era was ideal and asked if that was true. And then she said that Andromeda was lucky. The man asks in surprise, really, and she claims that at least someone saved her. And at that moment, she thought that she had no one to rely on. The main character understands that she has no one left in Korea either, because she is on her own. Suddenly, a gentleman comes up to them and says that if they have finished watching, then they can move away. Walking around the exhibition, the girl thought that, in the end, she didn't even notice how she had opened up. The man says his mother asked him to buy her some paintings, and she says she now understands why he came alone today. The gentleman says that once she has finished looking at the paintings, he will take her back, but in return, asks if she could select the paintings for him. The man says that she doesn't look like someone who has only been here a couple of times, and therefore she definitely knows more about art than he does. A guy asks a surprised girl if it's not fun to buy paintings with other people's money. Hearing this, the little girl thought that it was true, and then agreed and said that he should not take his word back later. The young gentleman thought that her eyes were shining like 2 pink sapphires, and no one else had such a look. The main character realizes that she is so excited that she chose 5 paintings. She reflects on how she could never afford to buy art, and so she just went to exhibitions. However, she realizes that it was fun. The gentleman thanks her because with her help, he made a great purchase. The little girl asks him not to give away these paintings and not to resell them in the near future. He says in surprise that they are all from the same unknown artist and asks if she is very sure of her choice. The young lady claims that they will definitely become famous, and the man says that he will definitely pass this on to his mother. The little girl looked at this handsome guy and doesn't understand why he always has such a serious expression on his face, and thinks that this guy is even a little more handsome than the main character. Henry wonders if they had to put the paintings inside the carriage. It's not very appropriate to sit next to each other like that. The gentleman says that, as one lady remarked, these pictures will become very valuable, and if they are placed with the rest of the luggage, they might be damaged. The man reports that he gets motion sickness when he sits with his back to the movement, and at the same time looks at the girl. She thought he was flirting, because the realization of how handsome he was made the situation even more uncomfortable. The main character realizes that she is Henrietta, the girl that every guy in Courtney has confessed to at least once, and that's why she doesn't want to waste her nerves on it. The man says that he thinks she has a good relationship with her sisters. Hearing this, the girl smiles and explains that they are only worried about when their little sister gets married, and the guy says he thinks her older sister has a different opinion on the matter. And then he remembers how the lady blushed when she saw him. The little girl says that her sister may say such things, but in reality she adores her. He asks if this is true, and then says that in that case, the thought of being separated from her sisters must make her very sad. The girl says that's true, and he says that's a problem. Then he says that it just so happens that he's interested in the prospect of her marriage. Hearing this, the girl smiled and asked what he was talking about and what he meant. The man asks if he can't be her Perseus and also wonders if he is suitable. Henri looks at the guy in surprise and asks if he just proposed to her. He asks if there is anyone else there besides her. The little girl replies that there is no one, and dumbfounded, asks if he is really talking to her. Then she asks why. The girl claims that he could not fall in love with her in such a short time. The lady asks why her. He just smiled in response, and then said that Andromeda must be lucky. The main character believes that it did not look like an ordinary remark, but rather like a thought that she had been holding to herself for a long time. Henry reflects that even if she blows them up as a family, in reality, they are just stepmother and stepsisters, and worse than strangers. With a father who rarely appears at home, the little girl understands that she needs a husband to inherit, but she has little influence on the marriage market. Perhaps it is because no one expects a large dowry from her. In other words, Henri has no choice but to give in. The man thinks that this is too tempting an offer for her to refuse. Then he says that this is why she envies Andromeda. The young lady asks in surprise what this has to do with him. He replies that because he too is looking for his Andromeda and someone who needs salvation, not love. The little girl turns to the guy and calls him father, and then says that even on the marriage contract that he gave her, his name is not there. The girl says that high-ranking nobles, and around them, there is always a special atmosphere that they cannot hide, no matter how hard they try, and it is visible. The young lady claims that he does not give his name, and this must mean that he is very famous and influential. The man says he will tell it to the person he marries. She asks if he wants an heir. The guy replies that he doesn't at all, and she says that in all respects, no means that his situation is different from that of his father and family. The girl says that she may be good at defending interests, but she is not a noblewoman by nature, and therefore, she has no desire to bear responsibility. The man says that she also understands that he is the best way to escape, and therefore, is ready to offer her whatever he wants. The gentleman believes that it does not matter whether she refuses to fulfill her noble duties, because he wants her. Henry looked at him in surprise and said that this was very impudent, and then said that she refused. In the evening, while in her room, the girl heard a knock on the door. The sister screams, saying that she is small and cunning, and then asks how she met him and returned here together. Henry replies that he has had enough of bothering her and simply suggests that she go to bed. And when sister leaves, she thinks that she is fed up with this. The man holds a painting in his hand and says it is for her. She asks in surprise what it is. The guy explains that it is his gratitude for helping him choose the paintings. The gentleman suggests meeting again in the near future and then leaves, leaving the girl with a gift. The main character believes that she was too reckless because he was right about everything. The little girl reflects on the fact that he saw right through her, even how much she wanted to run away from this house. It doesn't matter if she is a countess or a duchess. A noblewoman should give birth to children if she has a very comfortable life. Andromeda was able to give birth to 6 children because Perseus was a good husband. Well, there is no guarantee that he is also as good as Perseus. The little girl thinks that what she doesn't want most is to be Andromeda, and she understands that these dark thoughts that should be in the past. The main character understands that she should be happy because this is her first own picture. The girl doesn't know where to hang this painting. After all, she wants it to be in front of her eyes all the time. The next day, the mother tries with all her might to tighten Eunice's corset even more, and then turns to her eldest daughter for help. Candace says that even if she squeezed into it after such a heavy breakfast, she would only feel sick. The eldest daughter tells her mother that no matter how many dresses she puts on Eunice, she thinks the result will be the same as if she were putting pearls on a pig's neck. The girl says that she will be so ashamed if she is seen with her, and therefore suggests that they go just the two of them. At this time, the main character, standing behind the door, heard their conversation, and the maid turns to the lady and says that she needs to hurry because breakfast is waiting for her. The maid asks the lady in surprise if she really won't eat, and then asks her to eat at least a little. The main character realizes that the Duke of Bristol's ball was actually the place where Edwin and Hergé first met. Since it's a major event in the book, but as a minor character, she still won't see any of it. Henry tells the maid that she does not know what to do at the ball and says that she will not go. The maid suggests that the mistress should have a good rest then, since she will bring her newspapers and dessert. The girl heard the sound of wheels, a carriage, and thought that they were already leaving because they were in a great hurry. Eunice came into the room to eat, and when she saw Henry, she was surprised. The sister asks the girl why she didn't go with them, and also wonders if Candace told her to stay too. Henry explains that she has changed her mind, and then turns to her sister and offers to go with her because she thinks it's just a stupid point. The main character and the maids began to dress the girl and do her makeup. Eunice says she's okay, because someone like her wouldn't get a single dance at the ball anyway. The young lady claims she is not well, so she cried until her eyes were swollen. Then she touches the girl's face and says she is very attractive. Henry claims that her skin is so clear and her hair is such a warm, beautiful shade, like a golden wheat field in autumn. The maid says that it is, and her cheeks are very soft, and there is no need for additional makeup. The main character turns to Barbara and tells her to go to her room and bring a dress. Hearing this, the maid is surprised, and the mistress tells her to hurry up. Henry says he will tell her what exactly needs to be changed. A few hours later, Eunice looks at herself in the mirror with delight, and Barbara says that Miss looks great. At this time, the young lady, watching her younger sister, thought that she was wearing her mother's wedding dress, which she hid so that Candace did not have the opportunity to try it on. Eunice asks her sister in surprise if she can really wear this. Henry assures that, of course, it is possible, because this dress was as if it was created for her, and at that time she thought that it had finally found its rightful owner. The girl realizes that the dress fits her perfectly, and then thanks her sister. The main character understands that anyone who sees her will think that she is beautiful. And Barbara turns to her mistress and says that now it is her turn to dress up. The maid understands that they need to hurry because there is not much time left, and the main character agrees because she understands that she was the initiator of this. When the girls arrived at the ball at Edwin's house, the main character thought that he had already met Hergé, and therefore she should control herself. Eunice says to her sister, surprised, that people are looking at them, especially men. Henry says that this is great, and since they came here, they should dance, and then takes his sister by the hand and approaches the young gentleman with blonde hair. The baby understands that he is tall, well-built, and handsome, but a little awkward, but looks innocent, approved. The main woman says it's terrible because he just seriously insulted her sister. The man looks at them in surprise, and the girl says it seems like music is starting to play in the hall. The young gentleman turns to Eunice and asks if he can, as an apology, invite her to dance. At this time, the young lady thought that the mission was accomplished, and now she could go and eat. Sitting at the table, the lady thought about how rich people really don't spare money on food at parties. Suddenly, a man comes up to the girl and says that he has finally found her. She realized that this is the same father. Henry asks if he knew she was coming. He says that the names of newly arrived guests are announced as they enter the room. Hearing this, the girl understood what he meant then and thought that she shouldn't have come. The man asks if she came all this way for food and if that's true. And since fate brought them together again, he asks if she will give him this dance. The young lady thought that he was not at all embarrassed, and it had not been long since she had rejected him, and thought that if he did not care who she was, he should not worry about it. The little girl thinks that since she accepted that painting, she thinks she should be polite in return. And then she says, "Just one dance." The gentleman asks if she arrived in a carriage with Kirsten. She replies that Kirsten and Merlin brought her here. The man asks why she was late then, and the girl just remains silent in response. And at that moment, she thinks that she should control herself while dancing with him. The protagonist knows she can't let him control the conversation, and then asks if he was looking for other brides. The gentleman says that the first girl he found was so amazing, and then he hugs her tightly around the waist. The man claims that no one else looks worthy in his eyes, and the lady says that maybe he should lower his standards then, and asks if that's right. The gentleman does not understand why and looks intently into her eyes. The main character realizes that annoying family members are watching her because she doesn't know what happened to their faces. Henry realized that all the lords were watching them because no one else was dancing on the dance floor, only she and this man. The girl doesn't understand why everyone is staring at them, and not only that, because they have very surprised faces. Eunice looked at her sister and thought that they looked amazing, like a prince and princess straight out of a fairy tale. Little sister understands that even though she had to adjust the dress to her, Henri still looks elegant. After all, she is not only beautiful, but also very kind and smart to take care of someone like she does. At this time, the main character does not understand why everyone is looking at her like that, and even her sister Eunice is not dancing. The gentleman turns to the girl and informs her that he acknowledges his failure, which arose from his misjudgment. He explains that it was his mistake. He assumes that she is Miss Henri after all, she really wants. The man leans closer to the girl and asks why she doesn't tell him the terms she wants for her marriage this time. He thinks that way he can truly be the one to save her Andromeda. The next dance begins, and the young gentleman invites the main character to dance again. She agrees, and at that moment she thinks that it is up to her to decide whether he is Perseus or not. And then she asks if any conditions will do. The man says anything, and then takes the young lady by the hand, and she offers to make her a man. Hearing this, the gentleman was surprised and asked if she really wanted him to make her a man. The little girl explains that she needs the status of a man. He asks why she needs it if she is going to be his wife. Henry smiled and asked if he planned to be with her for the rest of his life. In response, he looked at her in surprise and then asked if Miss was thinking about divorcing him. The girl says that it would be better for both of them to avoid a lifelong contract. After all, in the future, they will meet someone they will truly love. The little girl says that besides, there are so many things she wants to do. The gentleman asks if she wants to say that he wants him to marry her to get her out of her house and then help her escape through divorce, to the point that he has to give her a false male identity. The man understands that this is some incredibly one-sided contract. The girl asks who is so desperate for this marriage and then claims that he is her master, and also wonders whose life will change completely because of him. The main character claims that in exchange for this, even if he has an affair, she will not care. The guy says he'll choose to be faithful in their marriage. She says he can do as he pleases. Then she says that like Perseus's wife, she'll be faithful. The man says he will be honest with his Andromeda too. And then they start dancing. After a while, the gentleman says that he agrees to her terms, and the little girl asks if this is a promise. The guy says that she is Henri Ascar, will become the Duchess of Bristol. Hearing this, the little girl is surprised, and then claims that he is Edwin Ascar. The girl screams and says that he shouldn't be here. After all, she doesn't understand what happened at his first meeting with Hergé and why he's here. The man asks if it is strange that the owner of Bristol is in Bristol. She explains that is not what she meant. Edwin finds her reaction even more surprising, and he thought she was just pretending not to know. The girl, screaming, says that it can't be. She doesn't understand why Edwin chose her to marry. Besides, in her mind he was colder, more reserved and detached. She said, "The gentleman says that the changing expression on her face is very funny, and there is no turning back." Edwin turns to his mother and introduces her to the girl and says that this is Miss Henry of the Viscount Wentworth family. And then it is reported that Miss Henry is the former Duchess of Bristol. The woman looked at the young lady in surprise. And her son says that he is going to marry Miss Henry. At this time, Mother had a desperate look. And then she says that if he does this, she asks what the people who came here because of him will think. The guy claims that he is simply following his mother's orders and is going to get married, and then asks what the problem is. The mother asks her interlocutor if her son only said that he would marry, and the friend claims that the Duke made it clear that he does not yet have a bride. The Baroness says that she put so much effort into preparing her daughter, and who could have thought that the Duke had a secret love? Madame says that the women who came today were simply thrown to the mercy of God. The Baroness turns to the ladies and thanks them for attending their banquet, and then informs them that they are forced to leave them, and therefore apologize and hope for their understanding. Edwin says he hopes they have a good time, and then hugs the pink-haired girl and asks her to go with him. Bristol's widow, Elisaveta Ascar, says that earlier there was a slightly inappropriate situation, so she was not able to greet the girl properly. The woman says she is pleased to meet the lady. Henry says it is an honor for her and then smiles. Madame tells the girl that, as she probably knows, their family is constantly short of people, and so, even at her age, she has a lot to do. so for some time she was forced to stay in Carlton. The woman apologizes for not knowing much about her. The girl explains that she is originally from Courtney, which is in the southwest. It is a remote area, so it is natural that she has not heard anything about it. The lady thinks that she must have traveled a long way to get here. At this time, the main character looked at the guy and does not understand why this fool does not say anything, and she thinks that since he brought home a bride, he should at least say something. Henry realizes that this man is indeed Edwin, and so she is not surprised that he hid his name. The little girl reflects on the fact that the Briston family is incredibly rich, and one of the most powerful and famous houses in the kingdom. The girl thought that he was different from what she imagined, but he was really incredibly handsome. Suddenly, the main character realized that she had stolen Hergé's husband, and that the Viscount's daughter was taking away the Queen's own lover. Madame reports that now that she thinks about it, she is very curious about how the two of them met, and why she, Lady Henry, decided to marry him. The Baroness explains that she is not saying this because he is her son, for he is handsome and a true gentleman. The Duke explains that they must greet Lady Henry's family before it is too late. The mother says that her son is not very tactful, and the girl assures that it is nothing to worry about. After all, the Duke is very kind to her. The young lady thought that despite the fact that she provoked him, he did not even destroy their family, and this was already very generous of him. Mother says that this is a relief for her because she will be very happy if her son gets married. At this time, Candace, sobbing, tells her mother that this is absurd. After all, she does not understand how she can get married before her. The Viscountess thought that this young man turned out to be a duke, and this was a big surprise. Since he announced his engagement right in front of the Duke's widow, the woman turns to her daughter and asks if she can stop whining because she thinks it's terrible. Catherine thought that, in any case, it made no difference which of the Wentworths became the Duchess, since she considered that this girl was still her daughter. The woman thought that she had lived with this problematic girl for so many years, but it had finally paid off. After all, who would have thought that the respected Duke would lay eyes on her daughter? The gentleman explains that he thinks it is because Lady Wentworth is very beautiful and kind, and on the way here, she thought it was a dream. The Viscountess tells the Countess that on the way here she thought it was a dream, but until today, she could not imagine that they were so close. Hearing this, the mother asks her son how he could be so reckless, and then he says that she must be in shock and therefore offers his sincere apologies on his behalf to Viscountess Wentworth. Catherine smiles and says that everything is fine, because she thinks that it only means that the Duke is very interested in their Henri. The Duchess says that she is still their precious daughter, and suggests that they stay here overnight in any case and have dinner together tomorrow. The butler reports that they have vaccinated Lady Eunice, and the Duchess reports that the last member of the family has arrived. Hearing this, the Viscountess was surprised, and the main character thought that finally, the lady looked at her daughter and was surprised because she wondered if her girlfriend looked like that. Henry tells her that her little sister was riding in the same carriage with her today, and she is the most precious member of the family to her, and then asks Eunice if this is true. The girl tells the madam that Sister Eunice is the dearest member of the family to her. Then she whispers to her to be more confident and stand up straight. The Duchess approaches the girl and says that she is pleased to meet her, and then asks if she had a good time today. Eunice assures him that everything is fine, and it is thanks to her, and then thanks him. The main character looked at her stepmother and her daughter, and then smiled and thought about the stunned faces on their faces. The Duchess looked at the dress and said she noticed it was made in the old style, but it was adjusted to the modern fashion, and asked if she had made it with her own hands. Henry explains that she made a few additions to it and just wanted to show how sweet her sister is today. The lady says that it really suits her very well, and the girl looks stunning in it. The girl asks her sister how the gentleman she danced with is. Eunice says he said he would send her a letter, and at that moment, she blushed. Hearing this, the mother says with delight that this is wonderful, and then she asks who this gentleman is. The Duchess says they seem to have a lot to talk about tomorrow. The next day, the young lady came to Edwin's office. She understands that, according to the book, Edwin developed all his plans here, immersed himself in his thoughts. This is the very place containing secrets, accessible only to the head of the house, and the girl thought that she never even imagined that she would see it with her own eyes. Edwin turns to the young lady and says that she has come early. The girl wishes him good morning, and at this time, the man thought that he was not imagining things, because since yesterday, she had been avoiding eye contact with him. The main character thought that it was very strange to understand that he was Edwin. And then she says that she can't be serious all the time. Edwin asks how she knows, and then claims there is no going back. She asks, surprised, what he is talking about. The Duke explains that he is talking about their marriage, because with the sunrise, rumors spread throughout the kingdom. Henry says it looks like it, and the guy says he invited her here to finalize the terms of the contract. He invites the girl to sit down and read. Sitting on the sofa, Baby thought that she would really marry Edwin. However, she understands that this is a contract marriage and nothing more. The first point stated that the fact that this marriage was based on a contract must be kept strictly confidential by the partners. The second point says that the contract term is 30 years. The girl was very surprised when she saw this line, and the guy says, "Let it be 29, and then he says, 19 years. The little girl thought that he was bargaining with her like a discount in a store, and then he said that 3 years, and that was more, to which she agreed. The man suggests setting a probationary period of 3 years, and if during these 3 years they do not violate the terms of the contract, then it will be extended for life. The Duke informs her that either party can terminate it at any time. She agrees. Edwin says she will have to give him 3 months' notice to ensure all procedures are followed. The girl read that any physical contact, including kissing, should be discussed in advance and used as needed, and at least once a month, including the wedding night. Party A must spend the night in Party B's room. The little girl screams and asks how it is to share a bed and thinks it is a shame. The guy explains that it means that they will sleep in the same room. The girl reads that, during the contract, both parties cannot be in romantic relationships with strangers. They must not allow any form of intimate relationships with strangers. The little girl says she wants this point to be more specific. Edwin asks if he really has to explain to her what happens between a man and a woman. And then he claims that there can be no vague wording in this contract. The girl asks if this means she won't be able to talk to men. He just remains silent in response. The Duke turns to the lady and says that yesterday, when they were dancing, she said that she has many goals and dreams, and then asks if she can tell him about them. The main character says that she thinks this can be called a dream for life, and she thinks that probably at the exhibition, he noticed that she loves art, especially paintings. The little girl says that, unfortunately, she is not gifted with the talent to create them herself, but she can definitely appreciate them. Henry says she wants to support talented artists and open a small gallery, and when she has time, travel the world. The young lady says that traveling the world in search of great works of art is romantic, and asks if this is true. Hearing this, the Duke thought that it was now clear to him that she could give up her luxurious life and status as a noblewoman, and all this for the sake of paintings. The man says there is another clause regarding divorce after the end of the contract, and this is not in the legal sense. Edwin says that at present, there is no way for them to separate while maintaining their position in society. The gentleman explains that this means that Henrietta Wentworth must die, but of course, only on paper. The young lady smiled and said that she was not against it at all, and he asked in surprise if she was completely sure and did not want to change her mind. The main character claims that she is sure because she said it at the very beginning, that she needs a new start. But in return, she asks to promise her something. Henry asks her to promise that her family and she will be safe. He asks, surprised, if she has felt any threats lately. The man wonders if she thinks he will become a threat to her, and only because she no longer has any value to him. The little girl thought that, of course, in the Queen's husband, he was exactly that kind of person. Edwin is a man who values honor, but after he became Hergé's shadow, he became her merciless dog, who would tear even his former comrades to pieces without thinking. The girl understands that if these two fall in love, then Hergé will definitely see her as a hindrance, and therefore, she would not like to die at the hands of the Queen or Edwin. Hearing this, the man just smiled and then gives her the contract and suggests looking at the second page. He claims that this is already written into the contract. After all, the party must ensure the safety of the other party for a certain period after the conclusion of the contract. The man suggests setting the term at 5 years, since once her death is announced, all her connections will be severed. The gentleman claims that this chapter was added specifically to ensure her safety, but he will add another condition: the posthumous care of the Wentworth family. The guy asks if this will be enough to allay her concerns. At this time, the main character thought that this would be more than enough to ensure her escape abroad if necessary. The girl says that this is enough, but to be honest, She did not expect him to be so attentive to their fictitious marriage. Henry apologizes if she is overdoing it. He suggests leaving this point as is. The Duke thought that he had not expected them to discuss it so soon, for he knew that it was only a precaution, since he doubted that they would really get divorced. The gentleman asks if he really does look so calculating and scary, and then he says that he doesn't remember doing anything that deserves mistrust. The butler asks for forgiveness, and then enters the office and says that Madam requires his presence. Edwin turns to the girl and says that in that case, let her look over the contract today, and tomorrow they will continue the discussion. Hearing this, the little girl was surprised, and then said that she was planning to return home today. The man says he thinks this place will be her home from now on. She realizes she hasn't even signed the contract yet. Henry asks his lordship if marriage is not a long process. He claims it is a matter of confidentiality, and they still need to establish the final terms of the contract. The girl says she needs to at least meet the parish priest and get to know the household staff. And she also needs to inform her father. The little girl looked at the Duke, and she realized that it was written on his face that this man exists and that he is her father. But she does not understand what this expression on his face is supposed to mean. The gentleman orders the butler to send an urgent letter to Viscount Wentworth, and then he tells the young lady that if there are people she would like to bring here from her house, then she should let him know about it. The girl says that there is no need for this, and he asks in surprise if she didn't want to leave this place. The gentleman thinks that it is in her best interest to get used to the new home as quickly as possible. At this time, the little girl thought that this man does whatever he pleases. The next day, Mother says that in the Duke's house, they know how to treat guests differently. The stepmother believes that in any case, she hit the jackpot with this marriage, and all thanks to her face. Henry, hearing this, thought that she could only talk nonsense. And then she said that she knew it and would never have thought that she would get married before Candace. The Viscountess asks if the Duke has any single relatives, and the girl claims that she needs to learn to stop in time. After all, Madam gave her a new dress, and His Grace gave them this carriage. The stepmother offers to think about her sister with a cry, because she just wants to say that it is worth trying. Eunice tells her sister that she thought they would probably get married at about the same time. But the girl insists that events turned out differently. The sister thanks the girl for yesterday, and she claims that it is not worth the gratitude, but asks only to promise to keep her informed of their relationship with that gentleman. The main character saw her relatives off, waved them goodbye. She doesn't understand why she has some strange feeling. The butler turns to the lady and says that he wants to introduce someone to her. The woman says she is pleased to meet her lady, and then reveals that she is Laurent the housekeeper. The main character was surprised when she saw this woman. And then she says that it is an honor for her to meet the Frost, and therefore she thinks that she will rely heavily on her help. Laurent says she'll be glad to be of service to her. The little girl thought that she had just met the most loyal assistant of the former Duke from the book in real life. The girl thinks that it's the same as meeting a celebrity. And the butler says that then he'll take his leave. Well, if it's useful, then let her slander it. Henry realizes that, now that she thinks about it, the butler from the original story was named Albert, and she doesn't understand what's going on here. The main character thought that Edwin's butler was not an important character, but she clearly remembers that Edwin's butler was a man who served the previous Duke, and his name was Ben. Ben did not approve of Edwin's indifference to the family, and constantly reported his words to the former Duchess. In the end, because of his misunderstanding of who he should really serve, he was kicked out of the mansion. But she is sure that in the book, he was definitely kicked out much later. The butler looked at the lady in surprise and asked if something was bothering her. The main character realizes that from the moment she first saw him, he has always been with Edwin. And then she tells Albert that she has one question. The young lady asks how long he has been serving the Duke. The servant replies that since he inherited his title, and before that, he was the chief footman. And he says he's been working here for quite a long time. Then he asks if the butler who worked before him has retired. Albert says he retired, but he wasn't really very well liked. The little girl asks if she can find out his name. The butler says that it is Ben Robert. Hearing this, the girl thought that she knew that there really was a butler named Ben, but for some unknown reason, he was replaced earlier. The main character does not understand why part of the original story has changed. Laurent explains that the Briston estate consists of 3 buildings. The banqueting hall, in which they danced yesterday, is one of them. Madame lives in the Ellis estate, the most distant from here. The building is the estate, the house where the gentleman lives, and of course, the place where she will now live. The maid explains that this is the room in which the Duchesses of Bristol have lived for generations. The girl saw the luxurious room and says that she feels as if love itself took shape and became this room. After all, this is the most elegant and charming place in the entire estate. Laurent reports that the gentleman said that she would use this room today. Hearing this, the little girl was surprised, and the maid says that since they are getting married soon, there is nothing strange about it. Henri thought that maybe it is true, but this man is very polite. But there is something that worries her. The young lady reflects on how this room has been waiting for its new owner for a long time. And now, a village girl who appeared out of nowhere has occupied this residence. It is quite natural, however, for such a devoted person as she to be dissatisfied. The maid says that she has prepared everything, and therefore the lady can enjoy everything to her heart's content. The main character thought that she would leave here in 3 years anyway, and that it was hard to be happy about all of this. And then she said that it was all so sudden and thanked. Laurent claims that this is her job as a servant, and when she left the room, she thought that the mistress would lose her head when she saw the room. The maid realizes that, unlike her family, who act very self-confidently, she does not forget to treat the servants with respect. And he thinks that if this is pretense, then she is very cunning. But if this is her character, then so much the better for them. At this time, the main character looks around the room and thinks that this design has a fashionable feel. Henry knows something is wrong and wonders why Ben has already been fired. However, she believes that if Ben had been with Edwin from the beginning, she would have recognized him immediately. The main character reflects that now that she thinks about it, she begins to notice more and more oddities. The girl remembered a conversation with the gentleman about how he was busy anyway, but personally taking care of his horse, and therefore he was incredibly attentive. She wondered since when Edwin had been worrying about such things. The young lady understands that no matter how good Kirsten is, she wonders why Edwin personally made the contract for the mating of the horses. Edwin was an incredible politician, but he cared little for his own family. He spent most of his time in the capital, and because of this behavior of Lady Bristol's son, after the death of the Duke, he had to take over all the family's affairs. The woman had to watch as the Duke, remaining unmarried, rarely visited the estate. And in the end, even this estate simply gathered dust, waiting for its owner. And so, this man visits the exhibition on behalf of his mother. And the girl understands that if some incredible changes have not happened to him, then all this is very strange. Henri watched the workers from the window and thought that there were no unexpected problems yet. And so she needed to find out the reason for these inconsistencies. In the estate of Alice, the main character thought that now how she was going to marry this man. You could say that she was in the very heart of the storm. The Duke's mother greets Miss Wentworth, and the young lady thanks Madame for inviting her to the banquet. Henry saw the puppy and thought that he was Lady Bristol's precious second son, and she remembers that he was a brownie, and much cuter than she imagined. The young lady stroked the puppy and called him Brownie. Hearing this, the Duchess was surprised because she wondered if she had imagined Brownie to her. Hearing this, the main character thought that she had screwed up, and the little girl explains that Lady Chester told her that in fact, she really loves dogs. The girl explains that her mother doesn't like them, so they've never had a dog. And when she asks if they have any favorite four-legged family members, she tells her about him. The Duchess says that it is clear that Miss Wentworth has such an innocent side. Madame says it's been a long time since Elise's estate was so lively. Then she asks the young lady how her day was. After all, she's even been introduced to the servants, they say. The girl says that it is, and they are all very kind. The woman says that she is pleased to hear this as the hostess of the house. At this time, the main character does not understand why she has the feeling that she is being assessed as a future daughter-in-law. The Duchess looked at the girl and thought that, despite the fact that she had grown up in the country, she had a good speech. And even if she lacked refinement, her manners were very good. Madame says that however her father the Viscount is very busy with family affairs, and it must have been very difficult for her and her stepmother to manage all the household affairs alone. Henry says that he still keeps in touch regularly and never neglects them. The woman says that she understands, because she also had an inattentive husband, and therefore she does not need to defend him. Madame says that, by the way, she seems to be very close to Lady Wentworth, so much so that her sister is jealous. Hearing this, the main character remembered that yesterday she really was constantly clinging to her. And then she says that, of course, she is her stepmother, and she probably knew that she would soon leave, wanted to express her love. The Duchess says that they have a loving family, which she envies, and therefore she believes that the Viscount put a lot of effort into educating his only daughter before remarrying. At this point, the young lady thought that this really did look like an interview, and then she said that she had studied French and history. Edwin says that the duck is getting cold and suggests eating it while it's hot. At this time, Mother thought that he had already chosen his future wife, and therefore she could only accept his choice. The gentleman turns to the miss and says that he has sent a carriage for her things. Hearing this, the girl is surprised, and the mother tells her son that if there were fragile objects, for example, musical instruments, and at that time she looked at the girl and thought that she could play the piano. Henry understands that this question is read in her gaze, and then smiles silently. The gentleman says that the Duke's estate already has everything necessary, and therefore there is no need for such complex transportation. The Duchess says it is true, but her son asserts that Miss Henry prefers art. Hearing this, Madame was surprised, and then said that she understood in that case, but the butler whispered something in the lady's ear, and she delightedly ordered him to be brought here right away. A man enters the room and then apologizes for the sudden visit. He says that he has such good news that does not require delay. At this time, the main character thought that she knew this man because he was the art dealer Lawrence. He finds rich buyers for artists and their works. He is one of those whom the generous former Duchess, patron of the arts, kept close to her. The lady says that if this is good news for her, then could it be? And the man interrupts her and claims that the lady is absolutely right. The woman says that this time, all the works chosen were from the same artist. And the man says that the work of this newcomer was chosen as the painting of the year. The Duchess asks Lawrence in surprise if this is true. The Royal Academy will choose the most outstanding works from this exhibition as the painting of the year. The man says this year's winning entry received the greatest publicity ever. A nobleman who owns a painting or supports the artist is officially referred to as a person of exceptional taste. And to think they were chosen by the former Duchess of Bristol. The young lady turns to Madame and congratulates her. Meanwhile, the Duke recalled the conversation at the exhibition, because then he asked whether he should also choose the works of other artists. The girl then said that there was no one who could surpass this artist, and he asked if she was sure of that. Henry reminds that he told her to choose according to her taste, and if he trusts her decisions, then he will definitely not regret it. The man understands that this is indeed a choice that cannot be regretted. Mother thought that over the past 20 years she had been trying to prove her insight in art, but every time it had ended in failure. The woman believes that Edwin, whom she forced to go to the exhibition, was the one who succeeded in it, because she was furious when he returned with 4 works from one artist. Lawrence says the most important thing is that something has happened that has never happened before. The buyer purchased 5 works from the winner of the Painting of the Year award. Hearing this, the lady was surprised and asked what 5 paintings he was talking about, and then she looked towards her son. Edwin explains that Miss Henry was the one who chose the paintings in this exhibition. Upon hearing this, the woman asks in surprise if this is true. The son explains that as a token of his gratitude, he gave one of them to her. Meanwhile, the main character, watching them, just smiled quietly. The girl doesn't understand whether he really needed to tell her about this right now, since she is in an unclear situation. This year's celebrated artist, Edward Poynter, sold 5 of his works from the Duchess of Bristol exhibition, and every newspaper wrote about it. The maid, cleaning the windows, says that he is very picky and just difficult to deal with. And her other friend says that the gentleman is very meek. What's even more surprising is that although the buyer was the Duke of Bristol, the gentleman and lady were on a date at the exhibition at the time, and the rumors about his love were true. The servants discussed the fact that the one who chose these paintings was none other than Henriette. Wentworth, the Duke's bride, which is now on everyone's lips. The maid says that the whole of East Carlton is in an uproar, and recently, even the postman asked about the young lady. The girl reads that the newspaper writes that perhaps the Society of the Royal Capital is not just welcoming a new star in the world of art, but is also watching the birth of a new family. The madam states that this is quite a successful debut, and asks if it is not so, and then turns to the young lady and calls her by name. Henry tells the lady that she feels she does not deserve such honors because she feels awkward. The Duchess claims that she will soon be Mrs. Bristol, and no amount of embellishment can be too much. The lady shows a newspaper in which is written the question, "Who is this Cinderella Briston?" and then says that as she can see, there are still many unnecessary rumors. The woman claims that people always like to discuss other people, and at this time, the little girl noticed that her smile was so similar to Edwin's smile. The lady says that in any case, it is true that she has excellent taste, and thanks to her, she can now stand in the world of art with her head held high, and therefore she is very grateful to her. Henry thinks that it is not worth thanking, and at that moment, she thought that she was surprised when Edwin so calmly told her that it was she who chose those paintings. The girl understands that everything turned out in such a way that she likes it. Madame reports that the reason for her long journey to Mayfield Manor was not reading newspaper articles at all. And then she rings the bell, and in a few minutes the maids enter the room. Madame says that these are Lady Henri's maids, whom they recently hired. The girl with the red hair says that her name is Agnes, and it is an honor for her to serve her miss. Lauren explains that this girl graduated from the Tailoring Academy in Lerone, and she was the best in her class. The dark-haired girl says her name is Benita, and she will try her best. Laurent explains that she is from a family that has served the Duke's family for generations. The main character approached the maids, then took their hands and said that she relies on them, and therefore, she will do everything possible to become a mistress that they can be proud of. Henry thanks Madame for her attentiveness, and Madame suggests moving on to the next step because she has a lot to learn. And then she says that from today on, she will be very busy every day. The Duchess claims that if they want to shut the mouths of all the curious people, they must organize the most grandiose wedding imaginable. Hearing this, the main character was surprised, and when she came to her room, she lay down on the bed and thought that this was too much. After all, she was already busy. Yesterday, her schedule started at 6 in the morning because she had just gone to bed, and now it's already dawn and it's time to get up. She doesn't understand why Edwin is in such a hurry to get married. Henry reflects that she hasn't felt like she was living every day in a dream for a long time, and thinks that by now the news has already reached her father. The girl thinks that she can stay busy better. At least it keeps her from thinking too much about everything. A week later, the maid tells the mistress that the hem of her dress looks like a cloud, and the miss looks absolutely stunning. Anais claims that they will work hard to bring to life all the latest trends in the capital. Benita says that the gentleman wants to discuss something with her, and therefore the lady needs to hurry. Edwin reports that it has been very difficult to meet her lately. The lady explains that she was trying on her wedding dress and did not expect him to come so soon. The gentleman looked at the little girl and said that it was very heavy because he didn't understand why there were all these ribbons and the sleeves were too voluminous. The girl asks what's wrong with her dress because she thinks it's beautiful and cute. He says he doesn't know, but it looks ridiculous to him. Edwin suggests removing some of these ornaments and making it less heavy. Hearing this, Milady thought that he was so annoying, and the gentleman says that he will go then. At this time, the woman with red hair, smiling, says that she received an invitation to a wedding from Briston, and they are the ones who took all the front pages of the newspapers a few days ago. The redhead thinks that this should be interesting. After all, she wants to look at them. The priest says that under the sacred heavens, in the presence of God, by the power given to him, he pronounces them husband and wife. And then he says that the groom can now kiss his bride. Suddenly, a woman with red hair appears and screams, saying that this girl is a small rat, and also asking how she dares to take away what belongs to her. The stranger holds a sword in her hands and offers to try to take this blade from her. At this time, the main character wakes up and realizes that it was a bad dream. Henri wondered why she had the same dream for several days in a row. She thought it might be because of the stress before the wedding. The girl thought about her first kiss with her loved one and thought that it was shameful. But she doesn't understand why it always ends so terribly in a dream. The main character does not understand whether she will be able to avoid meeting Hergé while the marriage contract is in effect. Agnes asks my lady if she is well, since she has had a gloomy look since this morning and she looks worried. She assures that everything is fine because she is just a little anxious, and she thinks that it is probably because of the upcoming wedding. The lady says that the maid herself looks tired, and therefore suggests that I overexert myself with altering the dress, since she thinks that the original design was beautiful as it was. Agnes claims that a wedding is a once-in-a-lifetime event, and she can't leave it as is. Well, she doesn't have any good ideas about the dress yet. At this time, the main character thought that it was already great. Well, suddenly she became interested in what if she did it this way. There is little time to create a new outfit, and so the girl suggests simply removing the puffy sleeves and unnecessary decor. But make the skirt more luxurious, like modern wedding dresses. The maid says, "My lady, that it is a great idea and thanks you." And the mistress says that she is looking forward to it and suggests that we get down to business as soon as possible. The girl understands that today is the day when their families will meet and get to know each other before the wedding. Henry thinks that she even put on a dress from Charlotte and Audrey from the new collection. But suddenly she saw a footman and does not remember his name. The girl remembers that the servant's name is Lewis and then asks if Lord Wentworth has arrived yet. The footman says that he has arrived and that he is waiting for them in the drawing room. The lady thanked Louis, and he, surprised, said that it was her thanks because today the lady looked especially beautiful. At this time, the Duke comes to them and says that, apparently, they should conduct additional training for the servants, since he believes that it is unacceptable for the servants to allow themselves such free expressions. The butler apologizes, and the main character tells the master that he didn't say anything like that and doesn't understand why he's so angry. Edwin assures her that he is not angry, and then suggests that they first meet her father, who is waiting for them in the living room. The young lady thought that he had been in a bad mood since the morning, and then they went into the living room together. His daughter, he quickly hugged her, and at that time the girl thought that they had not seen each other for 4 months. The father says that he knew that she was fine, but he does not understand how she could make such a decision without his knowledge. And at this time, the main character thought that he says this, and he himself is almost never at home. And then he says that he will strangle her. Henry says that, however, he arrived earlier than she expected. And the man says that of course, and as soon as he learned of her wedding, the Duke turns to the Viscount and says that they have not seen each other for a long time, and Wentworth shakes his hand and says that it is the first time he greets him outside the walls of Parliament. Edwin apologizes for not warning him in advance, and the gentleman says that since it happened this way, nothing can be changed. After all, his daughter grew up in the province, and he is not sure that she is up to the high status of a duchess. The Viscount says that although the union of their houses would certainly be to his advantage, the Duke orders him not to say so, because his daughter is quite intelligent and sensible. Wentworth says that his words ease his conscience. Then he turns to his daughter and says that, although belatedly, he congratulates her on her wedding. At this time, the main character thought that now he decided to play the role of a caring father. And then she thanks him and takes his hand from her shoulder. Candace approaches her father and asks him not to be upset, since he has her and Eunice. Henry says that this is true because Candace even postponed her wedding to take care of him. At this time, Eunice thought that she wanted to tell her sister something important, but she did not understand why she could not find the right moment. And she thought that maybe it would be worthwhile to visit her later. The little sister comes to the main character. She opens the door and says that she was waiting for her and suggests that she come in quickly. When Eunice saw the room, she was very surprised because she could not even imagine such luxury. And then she says that she has a very beautiful room. The young lady offers her a seat and asks if she was waiting for her in the corridor to meet. Henry thought about how they thought alike, and then said she was very glad to meet her. She asked what about the man she met at the ball and if she received the letter. Eunice first suggests that she take the box because it is a wedding gift, although it is, of course, modest. The young lady opens the box and says she's curious about what's in there. Then she claims he's not modest at all. The girl saw a family portrait, where the father and mother were still young. The main character recalls that after her mother's death, her father began to erase all traces of her presence. The room was tightly closed, and all her portraits were removed somewhere. There was only one picture left, crudely drawn by an unskilled hand. Eunice told her sister that she thought she liked painting, and so she tried to draw something. Henry, screaming, asks if she drew it herself. The sister replies that although her talent leaves much to be desired, the girl objects and assures that this is not so. The main character believes that this is a priceless gift that cannot be compared to anything. And then she expresses great gratitude to her sister. Eunice says she is very glad that she liked it, and the young lady noticed that her fingers were stained with paint. After all, she didn't even know that Eunice was good at drawing. The maid says to Mistress Eunice that everyone is busy today with Miss Henry's preparations and the kitchen. The lady says that she just wanted to help in some way. The main character became interested in how her sister knew that she loved paintings and that she missed her mother. Eunice congratulates her sister on her wedding and wishes her a long and peaceful family life. The next day, Laurent asks the lady if she invited her. Milady asks if she can see the list of wedding guests, and the maid asks if she should bring it now. The lady explains that it is not urgent and simply asked to bring it by the evening. And at this time, she realized that she asked Chester for the guest list, and she does not understand why he invited her. The Duke asks why she needs the guest list. The lady explains that she just wanted to check something. The girl felt awkward, and then said that she was just curious if the gentleman Eunice had met would be among the guests. The man asks if that's all, and the lady wonders if he could please not ask her about such trivialities. Edwin tells her that the list is on the table and she can check. She takes the paper and reads it, then remembers that Eunice said that his name begins with A. Talking to her sister, the main character says that if he has already received an invitation, then he is quite an influential aristocrat. The sister says his handwriting is beautiful and the paper smells of perfume. And the lady thinks he really seems interested in her. Henry claims that even if he perfumed the letter, it's a clear green flag, and then asks what his name is. The main character thought that if the letter only had the letter U, then that meant it was the first letter of the name. But she understands that there are too many of them and too few clues. The Duke understands that usually, if a person hides his name on, there are two reasons. Hearing this, the main character thought that he had just understood from her muttering what the problem was. The gentleman says either he is a fraud who wants to appear more important, or he is so famous that it is better for him to hide his name. The lady read the name William A. The gentleman smiled and asked why she was so surprised. The girl screamed and asked if there would be a prince and a princess too. The Duke says, of course they will. It's a formal invitation, and they've always been close to the royal family. The young lady claims that there is no special personal connection between the two, and hopes that their presence is unlikely. And to be honest, the princess is special. The little girl dreams that Hergé would just not come. The man says that if she is really interested in finding out who this gentleman is, she should ask him at the wedding. After all, he knows most of the unmarried men in the capital. The girl says that if he is really ready to help, she will be very grateful for it. Edwin says that if the issue is resolved, he asks to leave his office because he already has a lot of work to do. The lady says he doesn't have to rush because she's leaving anyway. And then she says she has something. And then she thanks him for yesterday and for today. The gentleman says that he doesn't understand what she's talking about. And the lady says that she won't tell anyway, because in any case, see you later. So the wedding day arrived and many guests gathered. The man looked at the leaf and thought that it was still too early for roses to bloom. The guest thinks that this is an artificial scent that was applied to the petals. The ladies say that everything is just as they thought. After all, it is the Duke's wedding, and it is not surprising. It is just a pity that the roses have not yet blossomed. The lady with black hair claims that perhaps it was meant to be that way, because maybe they didn't want it to be too lush. Madame reports that today the Duke will be seen in his ceremonial uniform, and he will look stunning. One even worries whether he will notice the bride. The woman reports that they say the bride has only recently arrived from the village, and no matter how big and luxurious her dress is, it will not help her look dignified. Eunice heard these conversations and thought that if they had seen her sister in person, they would never have spoken like that. Suddenly, the girl saw a blonde guy who asked if she was late, and then said that he was looking for her everywhere. Eunice assures that everything is fine, and the guy congratulates her on this significant event. The girl thanks him, and then says that she will pass it on to Henri. At this time, the elder sister Candace comes up to them and asks who this young man is. The girl explains that they met at the recent ball and that this is her twin sister. Candace says that she is glad to meet you. The man says that it is an honor for him to have the opportunity to meet the lady. At this time, the girl does not understand why he did not introduce himself and thinks that he does not even want to say his name. Candace apologizes and then says that they are from the bride's side and have a lot to do, and then offers Eunice to go with her. She grabs her sister and takes her away. Candace tells her sister to come to her senses, and then asks her if she thinks a man like him is her equal, and then asks what's so good about him. He's just a pretty face, that's all. The sister suggests that they hurry up because the ceremony is about to begin. As the Duke walked down the aisle, he thought that he had so many chores since early morning, and that fatigue was making itself felt. And so he thought that the festive reception should be shortened. At this time, the carriage brought the bride. Henri Père helped her out, and all the guests were surprised at how elegant she looked. The priest invites the guests to take their seats. Meanwhile, The woman with red hair thought that the bride has light pink hair, and the new Lady Briston surprises everyone with her origin and outfit. The priest says that they have gathered here to witness a sacred covenant made before the face of the Lord. Marriage is not only joy and happiness, but also support each other in difficult and sad times. It offers the bride and groom to exchange signs of their vows. The Duke takes the girl's hand and thinks that they are very hot, and she does not understand why he hesitates, and with such a stern expression on his face. A man puts a ring on her finger. She quietly asks him if he likes her dress. He replies that he doesn't at all. And the girl wonders why he is so cold then. She suggests telling him directly if he doesn't like something. The gentleman explains that this is not the case, and the priest says that in the name of the Lord, he pronounces them husband and wife. The Duke says that, on the contrary, she is simply beautiful. And at this time, the girl began to wonder if they would really kiss now, and she understands that this is even more embarrassing than in her dreams. Edwin kissed the girl on the cheek, and she realized that it was a strange kiss because it was not there at all. She thinks that it should not be like this. In a few minutes, the wedding reception began, and the main character is still thinking about her first kiss, which she even hoped for a little. The girl understands that in the end, when Hergé appears, she will still have to leave, but she believes that she can at least dream once. The main character wondered where else she would get a chance to kiss Edwin. Meanwhile, the man didn't understand why she was angry. After all, he didn't even touch her lips out of politeness. The Duke says he must step away for a moment, as he has some orders for Albert. Henry took a glass of champagne and thought that she should freshen up a little. The ladies greet the Duchess and then congratulate her on her marriage. They say that her dress is simply stunning. It is no wonder that the Duke of Briston was so captivated by her beauty. The lady asks if this dress was her idea, because such a daring neckline and luxurious embellishments are truly an amazing design. The next day, the newspapers will write that the Duchess, who received her title in an unconventional way, chooses her style accordingly. Women say that such a bold choice would be impossible for an ordinary lady. And then they say that her name thunders in society for a reason. The main character thought that it was rude for a first meeting. And then she says that she won't say that it's anything special, and then asks what their names are. The lady apologizes for not introducing herself, and then reveals that she is the wife of the Marquis of Roseley. The main character says that this dress was created thanks to the generous support of the Duke and the Dowager Duchess, because it turned out incredibly beautiful, and asks if it is so. The girl understands that her husband and mother-in-law approved, and she doesn't care about their conclusions. And then she says that she is glad that they value her husband's taste so highly. Henry reflects that this dress is actually her wedding dress. After all, she was ready to go out in it, but they convinced her that it was too simple and insisted on a new outfit. The lady turns to the bride and asks if she trusted Charlotte and Audrey to make the dress, and therefore she thinks it is an unusual, innovative design. The girl asks the lady if she could introduce her, because she is getting married next year. The Duchess does not understand how Edwin can be so indifferent to social life. Edwin claims that he, as a gentleman and as a son, has been diligently playing by his mother's rules since the morning. The woman says that if he ends the reception too early, it will be bad for his wife's reputation. Since today is her first day as a Duchess, she needs to strengthen her position. The son claims that their honeymoon is just around the corner, and upon hearing this, the mother claims that he is a damn impudent and stubborn person. The Duke orders to finish everything before sunset. Mother claims that she has not finished speaking yet and asks where he went. Suddenly, someone turns to Edwin and congratulates him on his wedding. He apologizes and asks his name. The man says that it is awkward because he forgot to introduce himself. Then he explains that His Majesty granted him the title of Count, and he may not have heard of it because he is from abroad. The man explains that he is involved in art, educational programs, and exhibitions. Edwin thanks Earl Evans for the congratulations. The Duke thought that she still had a strange sense of humor. And then, instead of shaking his hand, she simply waved. And at that moment, he thought that he didn't know why she was here. Edwin muses that it is none of his business. The guest says that he is actually more interested in his wife. Edwin asks not to misunderstand him because he means her subtle sense of beauty. And that is why he would like to meet her. The woman thought about how his tone had changed immediately as soon as she showed irritation. And then she said that her taste would be a huge advantage to his business. The gentleman claims that it will not work out and wishes all the best. However, The man claims that if the project is successful, it will also benefit his wife. Edwin says they don't need it, and the gentleman says that if he really cared about his wife, he would understand that his offer would be worth considering. Evans reports that he could not help but hear that her origins were being discussed in high society. The Duke claims that the Earl is overstepping his bounds, and the gentleman assures that he only needs to introduce himself. At this time, the Duke thought that she was very persistent. After all, he doesn't even know why she dressed up in a man's suit to get close to Henri. The Duke understands that if he can't get rid of her, then at least let the meeting happen in front of him. And then he says that he can invite his wife to one dance. Hearing this, the man thanks the gentleman. He claims that if his wife refuses and he continues to insist, the conversation will end completely differently. The Count assures her that this will be so, since he is not one to impose himself. The gentleman thinks that he has already spent too much time, longer than he should have left her alone, and therefore thinks that he should return. The man in the green jacket says that the Duke seems to really love his wife so much that he continues to look in her direction even now. The Duke grabs the man by the crib and says that he is not the most talkative person because he has been showing indulgence for quite some time. The Count says that if he has offended him, he asks for forgiveness. The Duke leaves, and the woman thinks that this guy seems to recognize her, but still behaves so defiantly. The stranger thought that although she had found out something, the Duke had finally developed a weak spot. At this time, the main character thought that it was too hard to breathe, and her face was about to cramp. The family was nowhere to be seen, and Edwin had gone somewhere. Suddenly, the girl felt someone's hand on her shoulder, and the Duke asked how long she had been waiting. The main character says, of course, because the ball is about to start. She wishes the girls a pleasant time and leaves with her fiancé. The Duke asks if anything has happened, and she replies that, of course, everything is fine, but he understands that it is obvious that something has happened. The lady asks the Duke if he has seen her family. He says that if she means Lady Wentworth, then she is with his mother. The man says he hasn't met her sisters, and the girl says she absolutely must see Eunice's boyfriend. The gentleman asks in surprise if she hasn't seen him already, and the lady claims that she needs to talk to him. After all, he doesn't know how they can leave their naive and fragile Eunice alone with a man who didn't even tell them his name. Edwin informs her that, unfortunately, he cannot help her find her sister now because they need to dance. Music started playing in the hall, and the Duke and the lady started dancing. She doesn't understand how this man is dragging her around the hall and trampling her feet. The little girl understands that she made a slight mistake in her step, and he is so vindictive. After a few minutes, he suggests that she take a rest. Henry angrily says that today is a special day, and then asks if he really intends to continue to behave like this. The gentleman thought that she looked tired enough, and therefore thought that no one would ask her to dance for a while. And then he said that he was only doing his duty conscientiously. The main character looked at the people who were dancing and thought that everyone looked so happy. The girl, looking at the guests, asks if anyone from the royal family has come. He thinks that recently she has been thinking too much about the royal family and talking about it. The little girl at this time does not know what to answer, and she thought that, according to the description in the novel Princess Urge, like 2 drops of water, similar to the king, had fiery red hair and a captivating appearance. And her brother Prince William was the complete opposite of his sister, both in appearance and character. He inherited the late queen's blonde hair, as well as her shy and submissive nature. The main character understands that William is not the type to show up to such a lavish event alone. Although she is still curious about who this W is from Eunice's letter, the girl says that she is really just curious because she has never seen a member of the royal family even from afar, and then asks the Duke if he has met the crown prince. The man listens to her and only remains silent, and she also asks whether he is really curious about the prince or the princess. The Duke extends his hand and asks her to dance again. She says she is curious about the kind of women the Duke prefers. The girl says that if he has an ideal, then perhaps she is more like a princess. He asks irritably what nonsense she is talking about. Suddenly, a man in a green jacket approaches them. Edwin tells them that today is their wedding, and then asks if there are spouses who do not kiss at their wedding. The Duke explains that it was done only out of respect for her, and she says that he should have warned her beforehand. He doesn't understand how that would change anything. A man in a green jacket congratulates the Duchess on her wedding, and the girl thanks him, and suddenly the Duchess takes her hand, and he says that all this talk about ideals is of no importance to him. After all, perhaps he has already met his ideal. At this time, the main character thought that she wanted to ask, but the dance was not over yet. An hour later, the girl thought that she was already dying, because she realized that she looked exhausted. After all, she had been dancing for an hour, and it was no wonder that she felt that way now. The little girl believes that this man continued to dance on purpose, just to avoid answering her questions. Suddenly, a man in a green jacket asks the lady if she is okay, and then offers her a glass of champagne. The main character thanked him, and thought that for some reason this man was familiar to her. The man says he is greatly honored to meet her, the Duchess, and then reveals that he is the Earl of Evans. The Count says that her recent achievements have made a great impression, and therefore he would like to exchange a few words with her. The girl says that she is pleased to meet him and believes that he is talking about achievements and about the gossip that she threw herself under a carriage and charmed the Duke with her face. Evans tells her that she is rumored to have chosen all the prize-winning works at the art show. Then he asks if he can talk to her for a moment. The man claims that today's wedding dress allowed him to fully appreciate her excellent taste. I was especially impressed by the roses embroidered on the skirt. It was very artistic and beautiful. The young lady thinks he is flattering her and says so, and then reports that the dress was made by her maids. The man asks in surprise if she ordered it from a tailor, like other ladies do. The girl explains that it was created by a talented craftsman who was personally invited by the previous Duchess. And then she says that Count Brulin is also different from ordinary gentlemen. The little girl understands that men usually don't pay such attention to the details of a dress. They simply divide outfits into beautiful and ugly. Hearing this, the man smiled, and then reminds about talents. He says that he wants to find hidden talents in this country, those who couldn't show themselves just because they wear a skirt, but at the same time have outstanding abilities. Just like she was able to see a masterpiece at first sight. Hearing this, Baby thought that it was difficult because she could not say that she knew all the famous artists of this era. The lady says that she is just a painting lover and nothing more. The man, crying out, objects and then asks how such a refined lady can be so modest. The Count reports that Henriette bears the name of Queen Mary, who survived the Puritan Revolution. The lady says that her mother gave her this name because she wanted her daughter to inherit her fortitude and patience. The girl reports that her mother always said that a person who does not lose hope does not fall before any misfortune. The man believes that her mother was a wise woman, and that Queen Mary also had outstanding artistic taste, and believes that the choice of her name was truly prophetic. Henry says that he praises her so much that she is already beginning to enjoy it. At this time, the Duke approaches them and asks if a true gentleman should not know that he should not approach a lady if she is alone. The Count explains that he only wanted to say hello. The master says that if they have finished, he asks them to leave, and then takes him by the shoulder and leads him away. The main character does not understand how one can treat a guest like that, because she wanted to talk to him longer because he was interesting. The girl thought that at least she remembered his name, because she felt that he would still write her a letter. Henry understands that she can't just stand aside because it's time to get back to the guests. The father turns to his daughter, and the girl thinks that she doesn't even know what to say. The lady asks if his friends have come too, and he replies that of course they have come, and everyone is here. The father says they were jealous, then smiles and says it's all thanks to his wonderful daughter. Henry thinks that this is great, because today there are many famous politicians here, and therefore his father should talk to them. Viscount screaming objects, and says that it doesn't matter, because today is her wedding. The man says that if her mother saw her now, she would be very happy. The girl says that she didn't think that he still remembered his mother. After all, a lot of time has passed. The father asks his daughter in surprise how she can say that, because he still can't forget her. Henry reminds that he didn't even come on her anniversary, and every year she went to her grave alone. The daughter asks her father if he knows what she was thinking then. Then she says that she hoped that her mother, in heaven, would not know that her father had abandoned them. Hearing this, the man didn't even know what to say, and the girl wished him a good evening and then turned around and left. The main character remembered the fairy tale that her mother told her, that this is how the King and Queen Mary overcame all their differences and found love again. Mother said that not everyone liked their happiness, and a civil war began in the kingdom, and the king was executed. The little girl was surprised to hear this, and her mother continued to say that the queen and her children were forced to return to France. They had to live without a home for 10 years and endure hardships. But she did not give up, and was able to keep the family together until her son became king. The daughter tells her mother that it must have been very hard for her, and the woman asks if she knows what conclusion can be drawn from this story. Mother says that life must be lived to the end. After all, a person cannot always be happy, and that is why the one who does not give up wins. The main character understands that her mother told such things to a 6-year-old child, and also taught her to always look for happiness and never lose hope. Mother claimed that happiness does not come to those who just wait, and at that time she thought that her mother was very wonderful. The main character thought that she was very glad that she was reborn, because she was so lucky to find such a wonderful mother. Henry. Looking at the photo of her mother, she thought that even if she searched for happiness with all her might, it would still sometimes seem so far away. The girl understands that now she will have to say goodbye to both her father and Lady Wentworth, because she will never return. At this time, the girl in the green jacket says that the Duke himself acted very barbarically. Edwin thinks that the Count himself is behaving more like a street cat than a nobleman. Then he says that he must have achieved his goal by now, and therefore thinks it is time for him to leave. The gentleman said in surprise that this was too much, and at that moment, she thought that he was a petty bastard. The woman thought that the Duchess was just a puppy that could be tilted in any direction, but behaved like its owner. And then he says that he hopes that next time something interesting will happen and leaves. The Duke looked away and saw that his wife was talking to her father, and so he thought that he would not disturb her conversation with her family. The man understands that this is her last day as Wentworth, and now she will very rarely meet with them. The butler asks the gentleman if he called him, and the Duke says that there are orders to find out everything about this man and his origin in the field of communication. The butler took the piece of paper and read that the surname Brulin is a rearrangement of letters in a word to form another word, and means Branure. The Duke realizes that the disguise is so crude that it is even funny that she does not even try to hide. The gentleman is interested in what she wants to do under this name. The butler informs the master that Mrs. Chester has prepared water for them to bathe. At this time, the maid turns to the mistress and informs her that it is time for her to get up because the water for bathing is already ready. The lady says that she understood, and at that moment, she thought that the word madam sounded somehow unusual. Lying in the bath, the main character relaxed, and the maid says that her eyelids are a little swollen and she will apply something cold. The hostess thanked him, and at that moment, I thought that she was even embarrassed to admit that she cried because of thoughts about her mother. Agnes suggests a little patience as the evening's climax is approaching soon. The main character felt awkward, and the maid asks if she should bring something to eat. The girl objects and says that it is not necessary because it is just a rumbling in the stomach, and she thinks that it will soon pass. Henry thinks that you can't eat it because suddenly it will get stuck in your teeth or your stomach will get bigger. She assumes that it will be even worse if he hears a rumbling at the moment of meeting. The girl understands that even if she prepares perfectly, her breath will still smell bad. And then she realized that it makes no difference, because they had agreed to just sleep together anyway. The lady realizes that she has allowed the thought that she wants to kiss him to enter her mind, and then quietly sinks completely into the water. Sitting in bed, the girl thought that she was very hungry, and Edwin had not come yet. She thinks that if she eats at least one cupcake, he will not notice. The little girl thinks that she should have taken it when it was offered. However, she understands that it would be awkward if he came in while she was eating, and her lips were already painted. Henry understands that the room looks so solemn that it makes her feel uneasy, and she does not understand how one can sleep alone in a bed in such an atmosphere. The young lady remembers that the Duke said that his room was nearby, and thinks that it might be worthwhile to go see him. The main character thinks that no one will come up here tonight anyway, and so they can try to agree to sleep separately. The little girl entered the Duke's room and saw that it was empty and there was no one there. She realized that he was still in the bathroom because the light was on. Henry comes closer to the door and asks the Duke if he is there. She does not understand why it is so quiet and thinks that maybe he is tired and fell asleep. The girl assumes that he suddenly fell asleep in the bath and considers it too dangerous, and then quickly opens the door. She saw the man half naked and then blushed, quickly ran away. He thought that this woman had gone crazy. The man opens the door and says he knows she's there. Meanwhile, the main character, standing in the corner, doesn't know what to do. The girl realizes that she is so confused, and at this time, the man says that she is too well heard, and even very well. The Duke came closer to her and said that he feels her breath even if she doesn't know it. At this time, the little girl thought that he came too close to her, and she thinks that he is not just breathing, but it seems that he can hear the beating of her heart. Henry pushes the man away and says she's glad he came. The guy asks in surprise if she really thinks so. In response, the beauty only smiled. He asks why she suddenly went into the bathroom and thinks that even if they are already married, this is too rude. The main character explains that she had nothing indecent in mind. After all, he had simply not come for so long, and she had something she wanted to say. The man claims that they could talk after he finishes, and then asks what exactly she wanted to say. The little girl was a little confused, but then pulled herself together and said that this room was somehow oppressive, and he was very close, and so she thought that maybe it would be better for them to sleep separately. The young lady claims that they are both tired, and therefore thinks it would be better to get a good night's sleep, and then says that she is really very sorry. Edwin asks if she really thinks he can't see how she's trying to avoid the conversation by making a pitiful face. The man thinks that such a conversation could be postponed until he gets out of the bathroom. The little girl says that she didn't even see him from the front, and so she suggests not to worry. But from behind, she was so scared that I didn't even see him. The gentleman asks in surprise what kind of nonsense this is, and the girl suggests that they just have a bite to eat together and then calmly go to different rooms. The Duke asks for forgiveness and then explains that he does not wish to do as Lady Henry wishes. The girl, sitting on the bed, screaming, tells him not to come near her. After all, she is not ready yet. Edwin put the girl on the bed and then sat on top of her and asked her not to move, then pulled the rope and the curtain over the bed closed. Laurent enters the room and asks if the owner called her. He tells her to remove the desserts and spread the word on the second floor. After all, she sees that he urgently needs it. Hearing this, the main character thought that anything but her desserts. The young lady, screaming, says that she at least left her some jelly or maybe even some wine. Edwin asks the lady what wine they are talking about, and then embraces her face and says that even without drinking a drop, he is already drunk from this very moment. Hearing this, the girl does not understand what he is talking about and thinks that he has probably gone crazy. Edwin's weaknesses. And then she nudges him in the side. The man asks if she is a pervert. She explains that he attacked her himself and even took her food because she was really hungry. The Duke explains that the lady wanted to sleep separately, so he simply played his part. Since they cannot let anyone know that they spent their wedding night separately, in a few minutes, the tired baby fell asleep. And in her sleep, she says that he will drive her crazy. After all, he plays with her heart as he wants, and his words throughout the country are clearly deserved. The man says that she drove him crazy from the very morning, and now this is why it is becoming difficult for him. And the girl says that it's their wedding night, and suggests not to quarrel, since they are both guilty, and suggests that they just make peace. The main character agrees with him, and then says that she is so tired that she doesn't even have the strength, and it's better to just go to bed quickly. The little girl wishes him good night, and he says the same in return. At this time, he thought that maybe everything should happen like this. When the maid opened the door, she saw the butler, who was sitting at the table and eating desserts and drinking wine. He says the lady looks like she's seen a ghost. She says he shouldn't ask because she's not even sure if it was the same owner. The man asked in surprise what the lady was talking about, and she said that there was nothing wrong. She just said it like that and thought that it might even be better this way. At this time, the gentleman, watching the girl who was sleeping, thought that perhaps this was a coincidence. Edwin, holding his heart, thought that it was neither his shoulder nor his side, and did not understand how she had immediately found such a strange place. And, as if she knew that it was sensitive, the gentleman thinks that this is stupid, because even his mother does not know this, and he does not understand how a stranger could find out. The guy looked at the girl and thought that this woman couldn't even imagine what this marriage meant to him. And then he covered her with a blanket. Edwin came closer to the girl's face and thought that he was even afraid to fall asleep and to understand that it was just a dream. One day a man was born, endowed with noble origins, but lived a life full of humiliation. He did not rejoice in any of his gifts, and everything that was given to him did not bring happiness. The boy asked his father to forgive him, but his father said that if he really repented, he wouldn't whine so pitifully, begging him. However, the boy continued to ask his father to let him go, since he was not guilty of anything. No one wished him happiness, so he did not wish it for himself. Instead, he devoted himself to the first intensity of passion he felt. So Edwin, swallowing the red liquid when his honor was drowning in the mud, chased only after the queen's throne. All the courtiers considered him a dog who was thirsty for power, and they called him a lover who hardly belonged among toys. And they also thought that he was a disgrace to the Bristol family, and nothing more. He sacrificed his heart to the radio for his mother's death. He was burning from the inside. The queen claimed that it was not she who had sent the assassins, the Duke of Duchess. In the end, Her Majesty asked Edwin to make peace, and then she offered to drink a glass of wine in honor of their reconciliation. Behind the mask of love he received despair. Abandoned without mercy, he drank the poisoned cup and whispered, "It's a lie," and he offered to go to hell with Hergé. Edwin kissed despair and willingly fell into the abyss. The gentleman does not understand where he is, because there is only darkness around. He wondered if he really fell into eternal sleep. The man thought that since there was darkness everywhere, maybe this was hell. The girl, while reading the book, thought that it was funny, because the main character was a little pathetic. This man abandoned his family and killed himself for the sake of women he was obsessed with. And so, the lady thinks it's his own fault. The man went to his death with her, and the lady wondered if it wasn't romantic. However, she thinks that if she were Edwin, she wouldn't have loved Hergé. The boy thought that 1,000 nameless blades were scratching his soul, and only after losing himself for an infinitely long time, he realized that this noise was the sound of a book closing. Unfamiliar voices freely discussed him and his life. And finally, the Duke realized that all his desperate attempts in elections were planned in advance, for the sake of an entertaining plot. Edwin thought that he was cursed and could not even die, and a creature born for the pleasure of others. The guy believed that his life was the property of an unknown author and readers. The man heard a voice saying that poor Edwin and the reader did not understand why she should take care of him, because he doesn't love himself and she doesn't understand why she should sympathize with a stranger. Because he didn't love her. He just wanted what he couldn't have, like a child who is capricious because he didn't get what he wanted. He just wanted a queen. The girl screams and says that it can't be. He just wanted to get her, and Hergé didn't even give him her heart. The main character understands that the queen herself did not know what love was, and dared to blame Edwin for it. And then she asks if there is at least one person here. After reading the book, the lady says that she loves Edwin, and therefore will make him happy. Hearing this, the guy asks in surprise who she is if she can fall in love with just a book character. Edwin saw a bright color that made him close his eyes, and when he opened his eyes again, it was summer, and the month was July, and he was 4 years old. Mother asks Edwin what's wrong with him and if he feels unwell. The boy says it's too bright, and his mother screams and asks what's happening to her. The man realized that this was a second birthday that he would never forget. And then he hugged his mother. The boy reflects on how he never thought the world made of beech trees could be so soft and warm. And then he claims that everything is fine and that his mother shouldn't worry. Returning back, he tried his best not to repeat the mistakes of his past life. The life of the Duke's heir changed in an incomprehensible way. His father said that he had a wonderful son who would be the future Duke. The second life as a Duke was easy, and the boy realized that living as a good son was not so bad. Edwin got rid of his ill-wishers and surrounded himself only with those he could trust. And so his life seemed quite successful, but there was still something he couldn't reach. He wanted to meet the voice that saved him from the curse. It was natural that the voice belonged to a reader who was outside this world. The Duke understood that the most he could do for the one who saved him was not to be unhappy. The man, watching the sleeping girl, thought that the connection that in a past life would never have arisen in this one attracted him instantly. The guy believes that she is proof that he is not lost in this life. Edwin thought that all he was asking was to stay where he could always see her. The guy touched her hair and quietly said that he asked her not to disappear, just to be close so he could watch. The next day, the Dowager Duchess says that today is truly a historic morning. Mother says she was worried because he said he wouldn't even go on his honeymoon. But it seems there was nothing to worry about. At this time, the main character remembers that Lady Chester came to visit them yesterday. Henri thanks for the care, and Mother says that she must be tired, and therefore suggests not to overexert herself today and have a good rest. The woman says that things will only get harder in the future, and that she must therefore gain strength. The young lady smiled and agreed with her, and at that moment she thought that this woman had such a calm face that without the slightest shadow of a doubt, she was probably already dreaming of grandchildren. The girl reflects that her mother thinks that they have already united on their wedding night, but she actually slept well alone, thanks to her son's care. The little girl thinks that she is very ashamed because she deceived her mother. However, she understands that she cannot tell the truth, and therefore decides to smile quietly. The Duchess asks the girl if she managed to make new acquaintances yesterday. Henry explains that yesterday she met not only the ladies living in the parish, but also those who live in the capital. Madame says that's good. Then she suggests that they have a garden party soon to strengthen the relationship. The girl understands that this is so that the new Duchess, who has no connections in their capital, can settle in more easily. After all, she simply needs to enter the social circle, ladies. The main character understands that although she is here for only 3 years, as a temporary Duchess, but since her mother cares so much, it is worth listening to her. Henry understands that making good connections will only be a plus in the long run. The Duchess says she thinks it would be best to do it before the end of the month. Mother believes that when the time comes, her son should also show up, at least for a short time. Edwin reportedly knows after yesterday's blackout wedding that she is officially part of the Bristol family. Mother claims that one wedding is not enough to dispel all the rumors, and then says that if he cares about his wife, then he should at least spend 10 minutes with her. The Duke just looked at his wife in silence, and at that moment the girl felt uncomfortable. Henry asks his mother what her plans are for today. The woman replies that she is going to chat in Lady Dilsey's greenhouse. Madame says if she wants to see the most beautiful orangery in the kingdom, then let her say so, and they will go there together. The little girl says that she would be very pleased, because she loves flowers very much. The Duke asks the lady if she could spare him a little time after dinner. The girl agrees, and the mother, watching them, smiles quietly. Henri, walking with her husband, thought that there was a lot of space for horse riding, and it is not for nothing that this place is called Grand Homespark. The girl saw the horses and was very happy, because they looked happy. The little girl asks the master if he wanted her to come here, and her horse asks why she came only now. The Duke says he thought she might be interested to know how Marilyn is doing. The coachman says he heard from Geoffrey that Kirsten was very helpful in helping Marilyn adapt to her new surroundings. Hearing this, the main character thought that her horse Marilyn was settled. The girl looked and understood that even looking at them, you can feel how they care about each other, and thinks that this is very rare. But happiness. Henry understands that it is joyful to see Marilyn happy, and she is even happy for her. The main character thanks Kirsten for taking care of her horse, and then she remembers that these two also drove their carriage on their wedding day. The young lady asks if they have a piece of sugar, because she hasn't even properly thanked them. Edwin assures that it's nothing to worry about, because she had so much trouble after her arrival. The man says that besides, these two are newlyweds, and therefore everything is fine. After all, the more time they can spend together, the better. At this time, Marilyn was upset because she wanted some sugar cubes, and Kirsten calms her down and offers to go with him. At this time, the Duke does not understand why he has the feeling that he is looking at the son of a henpecked husband. The girl turns to him and asks what he thinks of him calling her. She suggests that he continue calling her lady. The little girl says that she thinks it will be easier for him this way, and the gentleman suggests changing the way she addresses him too. The man asks how much longer she is going to call her husband Duke. He looks at the girl and thinks that this smile is too dangerous for his heart. Edwin reflects on the fact that she is just a naive teenage girl with no immunity to men. The young lady says that for now, however, it seems right to her to continue calling him Duke. He says that is understandable, and then agrees with her. The girl screams and explains that it's not because she's uncomfortable, but simply a little embarrassed. The guy thought that it looked like he needed to try even harder. The main character says that she is going to the capital this weekend and asks if the Duke would like to go with her. The lady explains that she wants to choose a gift in return for the gift from Eunice, and since there is a large selection in the capital, she wants to buy it herself. The man says that he will free up time if his wife wants it, because he thinks that they are having fun and having a good time together. At this time, the butler apologizes for interrupting the conversation and then announces that a letter has arrived from the royal court, and it is urgent. The Duke took the letter and thought that even after the wedding, they still bothered him. The letter stated that the pure blood of the Honbonline stallions should be preserved. Edwin turns to the lady and says that, unfortunately, he will not be able to go with her to the capital. After all, he has a matter where he urgently needs to convince His Majesty. The little girl asks what exactly she wants to convince him of. He assures her that it's nothing special, because she just needs to get consent to participate. The young lady says that she understands, and at this time does not understand, If there is nothing special, then why does he not say it directly? And at this time, the man understands that if he says at all that the king has his eye on Kirsten, it will only spoil the mood. The Lord says that His Majesty has been asking for something lately, and so it's time to go and refuse. The owner understands that he has no intention of breeding the stallion with another mare at this time. And not only because he does not want to get involved with the royal house, Edwin realizes that this horse is so carried away by Marilyn that he is unlikely to listen to anyone else. The gentleman understands that both the old man and he will only waste time, and he cannot afford this since he wants to spend it with his wife. At this time, the girl looked at her husband and thought that he hated going to the royal palace. She wondered what the king was demanding that he was so determined. Edwin asks the little girl if she has to go to the capital on the weekend. He suggests choosing another date and going together. The girl thought for a moment and then said that everything was fine, because she would get there and back very quickly. Agnes opened the magazine and invited the ladies to look at this page. She says that this is a magazine about high culture. This magazine is dedicated to high society and their refined culture and is in great demand. But thanks to a multitude of curious gossip, he is popular among ladies of all classes. The maid explains that sometimes there are articles about art there too, but it's all rather superficial, so there's not much scientific value. The main character asks if there is anything interesting there. The maid quietly says that this magazine wrote an article about her mistress. Enya says that it says something about the hostess's wedding and suggests taking a look. The young lady reads about the courage of the Viscount's daughter, who covered for the Duke, and this happens only once in a century. Henry thought that they were making a fuss, and not just because of the dress, although the design really does look pretty bold for that era. The girl reflects that she was even worried that he might be criticized for being too original. The lady says that surprisingly, the marks were very positive, and now she even feels a little embarrassed, although she thinks that she did almost nothing. Hearing this, the maids ask in surprise how this is nothing, because they understand that it was the mistress's idea. Agnes claims that the Duchess looked absolutely stunning in the dress. Bonita reports that, to be honest, she was like a nymph from myths. After all, no one had ever seen such a dress. Henry thanks the girls, and at that moment I thought that she really only helped, and these words embarrassed her. The girl remembered that she had to do something. And then she turns to Bonita and asks if she can call Mrs. Chester. Laurent claims that the lady didn't need to, because she could have come down herself. The main character says that it's just tea, and she just wants to thank her for her help, and therefore asks to try it, because she brewed it especially for her. At this time, the head maid wondered if the mistress was hinting at the wedding night, thus trying to put her in an awkward position. The maid thinks that it is against the rules of the servants to suggest such things. And then she says that it is her duty as a housekeeper. The hostess assures that she would still like to express her gratitude. Chester reports that the tea is incredibly delicious, and she has never tried anything like it before. Henry asks if she can look at the box next to her again. Suddenly, the maid is surprised, and the lady says that this is a personal reward for the hard work of all the servants. And then she asks if there are really only 157 of them. The lady says that the names are on the cards, so she asks that they be given to them. And then she says that, of course, there is something there for her too. The head maid tells the mistress that she shouldn't have bothered so much, and the girl suggests that she consider it a nice bribe. Henry tells them to take special care of her in the future. Laurent thanks the lady because this gift was very generous, and she could not even imagine that she would achieve such a thing today. The maid says that on the eve of the wedding, one of the footmen quit, and now there is one less servant. The Duchess asks if it is true and wants to know who it is. After all, she was busy preparing for the wedding and did not notice. Laurent explains that this is Lewis Howard. He received a letter of recommendation and got a new job. Hearing this, the main character was surprised. She remembered the conversation about how he told her that she was very beautiful as always. The girl understands that this is the same friendly guy who always made her happy with a smile and a pleasant word. Henry asks why he left. The maid replies that it is because the master himself advised him to do so. After all, a good position appeared in the capital in the Baron's house, and the gentleman personally wrote him a recommendation. Hearing this, the main character was surprised, because she understands that the Duke himself wrote a recommendation to the servant. The young lady decided to visit the gentleman. In the evening, she went into his office and asked if he had already had dinner. The man says that he, of course, had a little snack, and the girl claims that it is good. The little girl explains that she felt lonely eating alone, so she decided to come to him. The Duke says that he will come down tomorrow and they will eat in the common dining room. Hearing this, the girl screams and asks why. But suddenly she realized that she had made a mistake, and then she smiled and said that she agreed with him. The girl doesn't understand why he's so cute today, because all she would do is look at him. Henry understands that he has changed somehow, because he is not at all the same as she knew him. The young lady understands that the character is the same, but the action is somehow different. The man asks if that's all she wanted to say. She objects and says that she really needs to consult a lawyer. Hearing this, the gentleman was surprised and then asked the lady why she needed a lawyer. Edwin looked at her and asked why his wife needed a lawyer. The little girl explains that this is so that Togo will be prepared for life after their contract ends. After all, she even has a list of preparations for a new life. The girl explains that she is simply preparing in advance for what she will do in 3 years. The Duke claims that if she needs a lawyer, he can handle everything himself. Henry believes that he does not need to disturb the Duke, since she can meet him herself. The lady claims that it will be more effective if she talks to him herself and asks questions. Hearing this, the young man looked at her in surprise and then said that in any case, Joseph the lawyer comes here once a month. The gentleman says that if she wants to see him earlier, he can tell her. Henry thanked the Duke and wished him good night, and then left. When the man was left alone, he thought that this girl was truly incomprehensible. After all, she is embarrassed by trivial smiles, but she is not embarrassed to go against his wishes. He remembers that he noticed her audacity from the first meeting, and he also knows that 3 years is a long time. The man believes that it is not difficult to convince someone 3 years ago, and therefore there is no need to rush. At this time, the main character thought that the first 2 points could be understood, but the third was especially strange. After all, she was worried about why he had not yet met Hergé. In the original, they first meet at a ball in Bristol. Hergé wanted to observe Edwin without attracting attention, so she dyed her hair dark and wore glasses. However, her beauty and unknown origins caused a stir. Hiding from attention, she went out onto the terrace, where she met Edwin, who was also avoiding the crowd. The main character remembers that Edwin was with her the whole time that day. Since she arrived later with Eunice, he had plenty of time to meet Hergé. The girl suggests that maybe he has already met her and was not impressed, but she thinks that this cannot be. Henry thinks that after the proposal, she was too shocked to remember the plot. Since then, everything got wrapped up in preparations for the wedding. She doesn't understand Edwin, and she thought she knew him better than anyone. The little girl understands that one thing is clear, that she needs to act quickly. After all, she thinks that 3 years is not enough. When the girl was going down the stairs, she saw the gentleman and then asked in surprise why he hadn't left yet. The Duke says he's on his way, but first he wants to pass on something. Then he gives her the business card of the lawyer in question. At this time, the lady thought that he was waiting specially to give it to her. The man tells her not to stay late, but to come back early. The young lady asks in surprise why, and wonders if something happened. The man explains that a gang of armed robbers has set up shop near the capital. Their target is the carriages of noble ladies who return late. Edwin reports that the Metropolitan Police, or as the fillers call them, are currently trying their best to catch them. And so he thinks it's best to be careful for now. The little girl assures him that she will be careful and vigilant, and he doesn't have to worry about this because she can take care of herself. The Emperor turns to the Duke and says that he knows that he does not like to speak in hints, and therefore will speak directly. Since he doesn't ask to give Kirsten back immediately, there's no need to be so stubborn. There's nothing sadder than wasting the pedigree of a thoroughbred stallion. His Majesty thinks that such genes should not be wasted. The young master reports that he himself feels awkward constantly refusing His Majesty. The king says that at least he has the gift of speech, and then asks what about in 3 years, since he is still young and can continue. The Duke says that most likely even then it will be impossible, because he is not the one who will choose a mate at the will of the master. But if Kirsten has offspring, he will transfer the right of first mating to the royal family. And therefore, he thinks that today they will hardly be able to agree, and then suggests to talk later. The Emperor says that he can rest easy because he has business to attend to, and therefore must leave. The Duke thanked His Majesty, although he realized that he was very angry, since he was not used to refusals. At this time, the maid turns to the Queen and says that she, as always, was impeccable. Her Majesty asks Jenna if she can't shoot better than Max, and if she can say if there is anyone better than her. The maid says that it seems Max thinks differently, but the mistress says that he is a cheeky little dog. The queen looked out the window and saw a man, and then turned away, asking why this man was here. Hergé believes that he should be on cloud 9 being married. Her Majesty learned that it was the Duke of A, Jenna, asking if she should check him. The queen said that it was not worth doing. Hergé reports that she now remembers the new obsession of their great monarch, and he, it seems, wanted to get the sperm of some stallion. At this time, the main character thought with delight that she had entered the art store for the first time. The girl understands that there is a lot of things there, and she doesn't even know the names. And the number of colors amazes her. The salesman turns to the lady and asks what she is looking for. The girl asks if she could recommend anything that would be suitable as a gift. The saleswoman says they have a lot of great items that are perfect for this. At this time, the woman thought that this girl was so beautiful, and she had never seen pink hair before. The saleswoman remembered the newspaper article and thought that this girl could be that very Duchess. Madame reflects that this lady guessed all the winners of the Artist of the Year competition, and she is a new, influential figure in the art world. The saleswoman apologizes for her curiosity and then asks if she might know who she wants to give the gift to. The girl explains that she wants to make a gift to her sister because she loves to draw, but she has never used art materials, so she doesn't know what to choose. The woman believes that in this case, paints are the most practical and universal option, and then asks if she can be offered several to choose from. The saleswoman addresses the lady, stating her last name, and the girl, surprised, asks how she knows her. Madame explains that rumors about her talent have been circulating around the city for a long time, and that it takes a long time to carry out business in the capital. You need to be aware of the latest news, and asks if this is true. At this time, the main character thought that it was a little awkward, but nice because she became recognizable. The young lady says that if the lady says so, she trusts her and offers to show her everything that might be suitable, and not just paints, and then assures her that she doesn't have to worry about the price. The saleswoman says that in that case, she would recommend the new watercolor paints, because the added glycerin makes them much more convenient to use, and they dissolve well and dry quickly. And these paints are from Walter & Newman. And this is a new company, founded very recently, but their quality is really excellent. Especially this series. It comes in special packaging and has caused quite a stir, and the colors are visible from the outside, and the weight is much lighter than traditional containers made of animal bladders or leather pouches. The girl asks in surprise if it is glass, and the lady assures that it is, and they should be handled with care. But in terms of convenience, it is an excellent solution. The main character reflects on what it means that in this era, they had not yet invented paint in tubes. The little girl looked closely at the logo, which seemed very familiar to her. And then she remembered that this was the company that first started selling paints in tubes. This invention had a huge impact on the history of art. An artist created a prototype of this invention, and Walter & Newman saw its potential and bought the patent. They added a screw cap inspired by the principle of a screw, and thanks to this, artists were able to take their paints with them and capture the ever-changing landscapes right on the spot. Thus was born the Impressionist first school of modern art. The girl recalls that this famous landscape was painted in just 3 hours. Henry believes that since tubes are not yet on sale, it means they haven't been invented yet. The little girl reflects on what is happening, so she is now standing on the threshold of an important historical moment. The mistress turns to the maid and suggests that she should leave already, since they had more work to do than she thought. Hearing this, Ennius was surprised, and the lady explained that they would first buy a gift for her younger sister. The saleswoman was pleasantly surprised, because today she had earned a lot of money, and this lady had bought almost half the store. It was at this time that the working man looked at his watch and thought that it was already very late. The maid tells the master that the Duchess has arrived. Hearing this, he cries out and asks to wait a minute. A few minutes later, the lawyer opens the door and greets Milady. He says that it is an honor for him that she has come to such a modest place. The man asks the secretary to bring him tea and something to go with it. Meanwhile, the Duchess asks him to wait, and then turns to the maid and asks her to go to the shopping street and buy a box of chocolates. Henry suggests that Ennius take her time and look around a bit, and she might buy something for herself. The man thought that if she had deliberately sent the maid to talk privately, then she understood that the matter must be important. The main character says that he, as their contract representative, knows her situation. The lawyer asks if she wants to make changes to the contract. She objects and says that is not the issue. The girl says that the contract with the Duke states that it is valid for 3 years and asks if this is true. The man assures that it is. Henry explains that she would like to take care of her future after this period ends in advance, so that she has a guaranteed social status. The lawyer is informed that this is stated in paragraph 11 on nominal property, and according to him, they will create a new identity for her, as if she were a distant relative. And then he asks if she wants to clarify the details. The lady says that it is, because she has a specific option. At this time, she thought about what is interesting, because he changes so much when he speaks to the point, and is a completely different person. The lawyer says that he was just going to discuss this with her soon, and since she brought it up now, it will only make his job easier and thanks him for it. Hearing this, the girl thought that he had become softer again. She asks to formalize a new identity under this name. The lady explains that she used a French-sounding surname. The gentleman says he understands, and at that moment thinks that, surprisingly, everything went easier than he thought. When he read this surname, he became interested in whether she was really French, because he did not understand why she had come in person. Henry. She says that she wanted to ask one question, and at that moment, the man understood what the point was. And then he says that he is listening to her. The Duchess asks if he is free this afternoon. He says, of course, he has left the day free on purpose. The young lady says that she would like him to accompany her. Hearing this, the man is surprised. At this point, the Duke thought that the meeting should probably be over by now. But he doesn't see Geoffrey's carriage. The gentleman thought that he had left earlier. The maid apologizes and then informs that Mr. Stewart is currently absent. The Duke wonders where he went and whether she can tell him more precisely, and he also wonders whether the Duchess has left. The maid explains that the matter is that they left together and have not returned yet. Hearing this, the master is surprised and then asks how much time has passed since then. At this time, Mr. Stewart arrived and asked the Duke in surprise what he was doing here. The lawyer thought that they had come here because the lady wanted him to go with her. He also wondered why the firm Bolgan. The gentleman does not understand why she decided to come there. The lady explains that she was worried that they had not agreed beforehand, but it is good that at least they were not chased away from the door. Henry thinks it's a good thing they took with them a letter of recommendation from the owner of the Grey Art Salon. Hearing this, the lawyer smiled and said that, of course, after all, it was the lady, and as always, it was thought out to the smallest detail. At this time, the man thought that it was not about the letter of recommendation, because he was interested in who would dare to kick out the Duchess of Bristol. Stewart asks the lady if he can ask her why she brought him here. At this time, men enter the room and say that they hope that Lady Bristol has not been detained. The gentleman kisses the woman's hand and says that he is Henry Newman, and his interlocutor says that he is pleased to meet her, and his name is William Walter. The Duchess thanks them for accepting them despite the sudden visit. The men say they are honored to receive her. Walter claims that they are pleased to meet such a significant figure in the art world, and at that moment, he thinks that she is younger than he expected. However, the man became interested in why she came here to ordinary dyers like them. The Bristol family's lawyer has come with her. Hearing this, the men thought that maybe this was an opportunity to get a new investor. After all, this was a meeting between a scientist and an artist. The main character says that you might think that these are completely different fields, but together, they are an amazing combination, and they even started a new business together. Henry claims that without his genius talent, this would not have been possible. After all, his friend is able to accurately recreate any desired color. The lady asks if this is true, and then says that the robe he is wearing is absolutely magnificent. The girl believes that its design most likely reflects the difficult history of paint development. Walter blushed a little, and then thanked the lady for such kind words. The witch was very pleased to hear this. Henry reports that it is now clear why Walter and Newman gained such a foothold in the art world. She reports that she was at the Grey Art Salon today and was amazed by their achievements, especially those oil paints in glass syringes. Walter, hearing this, asks in surprise if she has seen their new product, and the lady claims that it is this one, and after the explanations, it became clear how revolutionary it is. The lady says that this is excellent portability, transparency, light days at once, and the geometricity of the paint does not dry out. The man smiled and then said that compared to pig bladders, this is just another level of convenience, and you can open and close it, Take the amount you need, and nothing goes to waste. Walter says they're just increasingly hearing complaints about glass breaking too easily. Henry looks at his friend and thinks he's an idiot. Then he whispers in his ear that this is a chance to attract an investor, and he's being so stupid. Walter reports that Billy is currently focused on developing new products and seems very tired. Hearing this, the main character asks in surprise if he is already developing a new product and thinks that it is very fast. The man says that oil paint cannot be made hard, and glass has poor flexibility and strength, so they are looking for a replacement that would compensate for this. Walter believes that as partners with artists, they have a responsibility to strive for the best product. The lady said she understood, and at that moment, she thought that they seemed to have no ideas at all about paint tubes yet. The girl understands that in this case, this is really a chance for her to speed up the process in the history of art. Henry thinks that this is not a real story, and if she participates a little, then nothing terrible will happen. The Duchess says that, having spoken to them, she thinks that between them they are capable of taking her ideas seriously. Then she asks if she can borrow some paper and a pen. The woman says that she can offer a solution to their problem and suggests that they trust her. Hearing this, the men were very surprised and became interested in what would happen next. After a while, Walter looked at me in surprise and said that this was a real revolution. I wondered why he hadn't figured it out before. Henry asks if the lady is sure she wants to share such an idea with them, even though they have just met. The main character says that she is ready to share because she cannot implement it herself anyway. Meanwhile, the lawyer thought that such things should be patented first. Walter says that tin packaging has a screw cap like a screw. Tin is malleable, easy to process, and resistant to corrosion. The man thinks it's expensive, but acceptable for mass production. Then he asks if she has a sample so he can just take a look. Hearing this, the young lady does not understand why he suddenly began to speak so smoothly. Henry suggests waiting, and then turns to the lady and asks what she wants in return for this idea. The Duchess smiled, and then said that after the launch of this paint, for 5 years they must give 10% of the net profit to a man named Henri. Hearing this, the lawyer was surprised, and then turned to the lady and asked if these were all the conditions. The man asks if she really thinks that's enough, and Walter wonders who this Henri is. The Duchess smiled and asked if this was not a tempting offer, since she believed that everyone would benefit from it. And yes. When she saw the lady, she screamed and said that she had returned to Mr. Stewart's office, but she was not there, and she was very frightened. But only Geoffrey was waiting for her. The landlady apologizes, and then explains that she had no intention of abandoning her, but had left Geoffrey there specifically to bring her. Henry says that at least she managed to eat some delicious chocolate, and she thinks that today was a very satisfying day. At this time, the main character thought that she wanted to return earlier, but she got so excited and started doing one thing after another, and now so much time has passed. The girl remembered the Duke, and thought that he must have already begun to worry. The lady believes that the mansion is not far from the capital, and if she hurries, she will be able to return quickly. Suddenly, the carriage stopped, and the maid asks the mistress if she is okay. The young lady did not understand why the carriage suddenly stopped, and at that moment, she heard a strange sound. The bandits scream and tell them to go down one by one, otherwise they will finish off this guy. At this time, the main character remembered that these were the robbers that Edwin had spoken about. The men, screaming, tell them to come down quickly, and then ask if they think they are joking. The Duchess, screaming, says that she is coming down, but only so that they release her guard. The robber tells the lady to give her bag to them, and at that moment, she sees that he has a military musket. The robber snatches the purse from her hands, and at this time, the maid asks how he dares, and whether he knows who is in front of him. Agnes the Screamer says that if even one hair falls from her head, all their heads will roll. The robber says that whether she is a duchess or not, everyone will die from a bullet, and therefore suggests not to rage. The main character says that there is money in the bag and asks to let them go now, and the man with a mask on his face says that it will be up to them to decide whether to let them go or not. The robber is about to search the carriage. Meanwhile, the young lady realizes that Geoffrey and her maid are in danger, and it's all because of her. Henry believes that if she had not stopped at Walter and Newman, and if she had not delayed, they would both have returned safely. The girl reflects that she thought there would be no robbers, since they were not in the original, and was too careless about it. The Duchess believes that she must take responsibility and protect these people. After all, she is their mistress, and therefore must help in difficult times. The robber says in surprise that this is all trash and the carriage is so fancy, but there is nothing to hope for. A masked man approaches a lady and tells her that she should go to a jewelry store instead. At this time, the little girl thought that he had thrown away her precious gift, and the robber orders her to take off at least something from herself. At this time, Geoffrey attacks the robber from behind, and screaming, tells the lady to leave in the carriage. The robber screams and says that this brat has completely lost his fear, and then uses a dagger to wound his face. The robber screams and says that next time he will definitely hit and not miss, because he wanted to let him go nicely. The main character turns to them and tells them to stop, because they have given everything they had, and then asks them to let them go quickly. The Duchess thought that she had to do everything possible to comply with their demands and leave quickly, and if they found out who she was, they wouldn't let her go. The girl thinks that they will probably think that the Duke will now persecute them. After all, who knows that these vile bastards, instead of leaving evidence, might also kill? Henry took the necklace off her neck and offered to take it. Seeing this, the robber smiled and said that she finally got it. The girl took off the ring and said that this was all she had, and that the maid definitely had nothing. Agnes turns to the lady and says that if she gives it to him, but she assures him that everything is fine. The Duchess believes that special pieces of jewelry, such as a wedding ring, are easy to trace, and so they could lead to criminals. This gemstone is especially valuable. Even if it is sold, it will be found quickly. The lady claims that if they don't believe her, they can check. She doesn't understand why she would carry something valuable with her when she just went out to buy some paint. The bandit turns to Geoffrey and says that he will go with them, since they can't let them do any harm until they leave the area. At this time, Geoffrey thought that he was doomed, and the main character screamed and objected. The robber asks her if she thinks they have a choice, and then offers to agree quietly with them. Henry claims that if someone goes missing, the case will become high profile, and it will be more difficult for them to escape, and it will be difficult to take a person hostage. The lady suggests taking the horse instead. After all, it is a well-groomed thoroughbred and costs a lot of money. The Duchess asks if they saw that she doesn't even react to the sound of the gunshot. She assures them that it is much easier to escape on a horse and that it will be difficult for them to catch up. The robbers agree to dinner and consider that there is sense in it. And at this time, the girl thought about what she had done. The robber says he thought nothing would come of it today, but in the end, the haul wasn't bad. Then he asks why they didn't think of taking the horses before. At this time, Geoffrey thought that even though he had survived now, it was dangerous to remain in such a forest without a horse. The guard believes that the lady saved his life, and he should use it to good effect, since he has nothing to lose anyway. The robber mounted the horse and Geoffrey hit the stallion. The horse jumped up and the robber fell. Geoffrey turns to the ladies and tells them to run away quickly. Meanwhile, another robber grabs a gun and shoots. However, the shot did not belong to him, but to the Duke, who arrived on time. Stuart asks the gentleman in surprise what brought him here at such a time, and he angrily asks where they have been. The lawyer explains that the lady said she had business, and so he accompanied her. The gentleman wondered where they were going, and at that time, the man thought that he had done something wrong. Stuart explains that she had a deal with a paint company, and the lady returned immediately after the deal was completed. Edwin asks if it means that they broke up recently, and the man says that it's true. The Duke understands that at a time when bandits are operating on the roads, attacking carriages, and even when the sun has almost set, the gentleman asks how he will send her alone and without security. And at this time, the steward realized that he had made a mistake. The gentleman tells him to go to the police station and order 2 horsemen to go towards the Bristol estate. Edwin says that he will go on horseback, and the coachman should spend the night here in the capital and return tomorrow. The Duke asks Joseph if he has a weapon with him, and then he quickly mounts his horse and rides away. Thus, the gentleman almost made it to the scene of the crime and wounded one of the robbers in the leg. Edwin quickly dealt with the other robber, and then said that they were worthless scum, and for attacking his wife, they would be very sorry about it. The man asks Geoffrey why he is standing there with such a confused expression. He should always be on guard. The gentleman turns to the ladies, and the lady, screaming, turns to her husband and says that there is danger behind. The Duke reacted quickly and then took out his revolver and shot the robber in the leg, thus wounding him. And in a few minutes, he came closer and pressed his foot on his arm. At this time, help arrived in a convoy of police officers. The guard screamed and said that these were horsemen and that it seemed that Mr. Joseph had called them. The main character suddenly fainted, and the maid does not understand what to do because her lady is so pale and she had to protect her. Aeneas realizes that the lady was protecting her instead and therefore feels uncomfortable. The Duke takes his wife in his hand and asks if she is hurt. The maid assures him that she must be fine. She was just very nervous. Henry, sitting in the carriage, realized that she had only just woken up, and she wondered what would have happened if Edwin had not arrived on time. The girl thinks that she will have to thank him later because he saved her life. After all, she understands that if the Duke had not come in time, she cannot even imagine what could have happened. The master turns to the maid and asks her to take care of the mistress because she is not feeling well, and also not to leave her alone. He asks me to tell Miss Chester that she should also look after her, as he must be sure that she will be well looked after. Henry looked at her husband and then, screaming, asked if they would go together. Edwin does not turn around, but replies that he still has business with the horsemen, and so he tells her to go back and rest. When the girl returned home, she saw Joseph, and the servants said that they were very glad that their mistress was safe. The lawyer says that his lordship suddenly came and grabbed only one shotgun and then started running, and he was so worried. The young lady asks if these horsemen and the Duke ordered it all, because she thought it was Joseph who called. Stewart insists that this is exactly how it happened, and the girl wondered if he was really that worried about her. The main character believes that she caused him much more trouble than she thought. After all, she knows that he himself must be tired, but she stayed and sorted everything out. Henry doesn't even know how she can thank him later, since this is the first time he's worried about her like this. The young lady realizes that when she thought this way in the carriage, she had no idea how everything would turn out. Edwin asks his wife if she waited for him just to ask him about this. The man asks if he is funny to her. Hearing this, the little girl does not understand why he speaks to her like that and how it all happened. A few hours ago, Chester turns to the lady and says that she was so worried because it was already late and she still wasn't there. Henry tells Alberto to take Geoffrey to his guest room and call a doctor tomorrow to check if everything is okay with his health. After all, he had a very hard time today and suffered more than anyone else. The lady says that Aeneas should not sleep alone tonight and asks to take care of her. The head maid says she understands and then asks where the master is now. The lady replies that the Duke will also be back soon, as they met on the way home. Henry suggests that Geoffrey and Aeneas give them a few days off. Since they were hurt today and need an hour to recover, Aeneas blushed upon hearing this, and then turned to Madame and insisted that she was perfectly fine. However, the main character tells the maid to do everything as she says, and then everything will be fine. After all, only then will she be calm. At this time, the young lady remembered that all her paints were broken, and she felt very sorry about it. Well, she understands that, since it is already late, tomorrow will be a day to think about it. Henry says that she wants to wash herself first, and then asks Chester if she could prepare the water for the bath. When the Duke returned, the lady met him. The man understands that she was waiting for him and asks why she is not asleep yet. The lady explains that she was waiting for him and asks if he has questioned the robbers. She also wonders who these people are and if they have other accomplices. The man asks in surprise if she waited for him to ask about this, because he thinks it's not worth the effort. And then he claims that he will sort everything out himself and therefore suggests that she go and rest. The butler gives the lady a lamp and says that it is dangerous to walk along the dark corridor. She thanks Alberto. The girl followed the Duke and asked along the way if he had been hurt, but she became curious about the criminals. The gentleman claims that they will not get off lightly, and therefore she can rest easy. The lady says that she is worried about a lot of things because of what happened today. Her heart is beating wildly, and so she asks to forgive her because she is very worried. The girl says that she is also worried about whether Geoffrey and Aeneas are okay because they were scared. Edwin turns to his wife and asks why she didn't come home earlier. Then he reminds her that he asked her to. The man claims that even now she has not listened to his advice and has not gone to bed, and she is constantly worried about others, not about herself. The Duke sees the smile on the lady's face and asks if he is so funny to her. At this point, the little girl realizes that she has overdone it. But there is no impudence in her smile. The main character objects and assures that this is not so, because in fact, she wanted to say thank you to him. Hearing this, he takes a ring out of his pocket and puts it in her hand. And then he says that it would be best for her to begin with an explanation. Henry explains that it will sound like an excuse, but at the time she thought it was the best way. After all, she thought that this was the only way she could track down and catch the robbers. But the gentleman claims that this is too presumptuous. The girl was surprised, and he turns around and says that this is enough and suggests that they finish here since it is time to go to bed. The main character, claiming, says that she could not help but give the ring because she had to do it so that they would not harm them. Edwin reports that even if they had left them alone and gone away, she would have been left in the middle of the forest at night with a horseless carriage. The lady explains that she thought that if she didn't return home, he would send someone to find her. The man asks if everything went as she wanted in that case. While talking to him, the girl realized that they were already near her room, and the man asks if she now understands that it was reckless. The main character claims that the robbers were guarding this road, so the responsibility for what happened lies not with her but with them. The gentleman asks if this means it is not her fault, and the little girl claims that he criticizes her too much. Edwin orders her to inform him of all her trips in future. Then, he says he thinks it would be better to forbid her to leave the house. Hearing this, the lady was surprised, and he suggests that she stay at home for now and rest, since today was a very difficult day for her. The Duke thought that even though he knew she meant no harm, he didn't understand why he was so angry. The gentleman understands that if he had been even a little late, everything could have gone very badly. But in the end, his wife turned out to be right. The next day, the head maid tells the mistress that she will order new paints for her. The young lady believes that this means that she is indeed trapped, and this is something she does not want. And the butler greets Mrs. Chester, and then says that he is so thirsty. The maid invites him to sit down and asks if it is really good morning today. In response, the man only smiled, and Chester asks what about the owner and if he is still sleeping. The butler says he doesn't think so, but it seems to him that he didn't even go to bed because he ran into him when he went to clean the office. The man says that he thought he saw the ghost of the late Duke, and that is why he was very scared. The head maid asks if he knows anything about what happened last night. Because I understand that something happened, but there is no one else to ask. The butler said that he heard that robbers had attacked the carriage. The woman was surprised to hear this. The man explains that Geoffrey told him that they threatened him with a gun and how bravely the lady behaved. But at a critical moment, the owner appeared and single-handedly defeated the two robbers. And so, thank God that it did not develop into something serious. The man says he thinks things ended well, but he has no idea what the two argued about. Chester says that she seems to know, and that the master must have put pressure on the mistress. After all, he thinks that her mistress is very kind and soft-hearted, and is not used to such an attitude. The maid says that she has already been through a terrible situation, and was probably scared, and the master should not have reacted like that. The butler claims that the master was simply too worried, and that's why he grumbled a little. And therefore, he thinks that it's not necessary to take it so much to heart. And maybe he's even right. Chester believes that, even if Madame did do something wrong, as the old saying goes, kindness and sympathy are the way to get an apology. The man claims that they can always be gentle with everyone. Also, mistakes should always be acknowledged. At this time, the main character, sitting at breakfast, thought that she was very angry, and therefore she could not do anything about it. The girl remembers that this man scolded her all evening, and she held back with all her might so as not to burst into tears. At this time, the head maid informs Madame that the attending physician has arrived, and Madame orders to tell him to come in. A young man came into the room and said he was pleased to meet Madame. Then he said his name was Alan. Lying in bed, the girl does not understand what it is, and feels somehow uneasy. The main character saw that he had a fixed gaze, and then she asks when he started working as a doctor. Alan replies that it was about 5 years ago, and before that, he helped his father while studying. Alan explains that his father is quite old, and so he retired and he does his job. The main character thought that this man did not appear in the original, and she also suggests that maybe she missed something when she read the book. Henry knows that this man's father, the previous doctor, was a bad man. He had a beautiful face, so he was constantly pestering women. The young lady realizes that this is the second person in the mansion, contradicting the original. She wonders why the story has changed so much. The doctor says that, fortunately, her body seems to be fine as her temperature is normal, and there are no visible injuries. Also, her appetite is normal. The doctor says that even if her body is fine, she may still be in a state of psychological shock, and so he recommends that she get more rest. The Duchess thanked him and then asked what about her maid. After all, she was worried about her, because this girl had suffered a lot today. The man assures that Miss Ennius's condition is stable and she also needs a good rest. And since she is young, her strength will be restored quickly. Hearing this, the main character smiled and thanked him, and then asked him to take care of both her and Geoffrey. At this time, the head maid, who was in the room and watching them, thought that her mistress really did not look like an ordinary aristocrat. Chester thinks that she seems to genuinely care and worry about her employees, and he understands that such hostesses are very rare, and therefore they are all very lucky. A young lady asks if this means that simple physical activity is allowed. The doctor assures that a simple walk will do. Laurent thought that this was the master's order, and then reported that the master said that she should stay home and rest. The lady claims that Mr. Clark said she was fine, and at that moment she realized that he meant he was serious about the ban on leaving the house. The lady realizes that the paints are spoiled, and she needs to buy new ones, and the maid asks why she doesn't rest a little and then talk to the master again. The main character understands that she feels awkward being at home, and that is why she wants to go out to have some fun and explore the city. Chester says that if the lady leaves today, Ennius will be very worried. The lady took a few steps and then sat down on the sofa. She thought that this was still too much. After all, he was still offended, although they could have just talked. The girl believes that if this continues, she will not leave it so easily. The butler tells the gentleman that his wife is resting in her room, and he says that this time she listened to him. The servant reports that they say that the mistress is very upset because she cannot buy new paints, and she really wanted to make her sister so happy, and so she hoped to make a surprise for her. Hearing this, the Duke thought that she had gone too far this time. After all, he thought that if she did nothing, she would be bored and sad. Edwin says that if he buys her paints, he thinks she will like it, and therefore thinks that this issue should be addressed. A few days later, the butler tells the Count that they say that yesterday she again did not leave her room. Edwin asks if the paints have been delivered yet. The servant says that they have, and that the mistress has already sent them as a gift, and also written a letter to the young lady Eunice. The Duke realizes that in gratitude for the paints, she did not even invite him to dinner. Meanwhile, the main character made herself a cucumber mask and thinks that today she will eat in her room again, because she feels so bad. On the first day of house arrest, the young lady turns to Ennius and, screaming, reminds her that she asked her to have a good rest. The maid explains that it is quite difficult to just lie down, and besides, she feels calmer when she sees her mistress. Henry thinks that words don't seem to be helping, so she'll have to resort to the last option. The Duchess tells the maid to go to the kitchen at once and bring her whatever she tells her. Then she says she wants some apple pie. Bonita asks in surprise what it is for. The lady explains that it is supposed to be a homemade face mask. The maids say that this is the first time they have done something like this, because it is something cold and slippery but refreshing. And the main character claims that after this, the skin of the face will become soft and tender, and they will like it, which they will do almost every day. Henry says that in any case, as long as she stays in the room, it would be great if the two of them spent time together with her. The girls were surprised to hear this and asked if it was really possible. She said that, of course it was, because it was a social package for employees from her. At this time, the Duke asks Chester how the Duchess is doing and if she is feeling well. She replies that she is not exactly feeling well, because it seemed to her that she was a little sad. The gentleman thought that managing a person who is not a servant is troublesome and difficult, and he gets offended every now and then. On the third day of house arrest, the main character teaches the maids to dance. She says that in the summer, due to the heat, she will quickly get lost and suggests that they take a little rest. Ennius asks the lady if she can get her something to drink. She thinks that would be great. The girl opens the window to get some fresh air. And at that moment, she thought that it was good that she was not alone. Otherwise, she would have already run away to the street today. The main character understands that sitting in the room is rather boring and monotonous. However, she believes that she should do her own things because she has a lot of free time. The lady saw the gentleman and thought that he had locked her in the house, and he himself had calmly gone for a horse ride, and therefore considered him a scoundrel. The little girl suddenly wondered why she was so offended, because she understood that, if she thought about it, Edwin had always been like this, and she wondered if she had become attached to him. Edwin has always been at the center of all the changes so far, and that the butler and the attending physician have changed. This is because Edwin chose someone different from the original. The girl understands that the fact that she still has no contact with the main character of Hergé is also because Edwin has changed. The little girl doesn't understand why this man changed so much and what contributed to it. And then she remembers that according to the plot, it should be different. She suggests that there may be this world that is similar to the original, but has nothing in common with them. The main character reflects on the fact that if the story does not develop according to the original, she does not know whether she will need to escape from here at all. Henri understands that she can't think so carelessly, because in any case she is superfluous in this plot, and therefore she must rely only on herself. And besides, she had already experienced something similar once, but in reality, she would be glad to find a new family. The girl reflects on the fact that even if Edwin treats her well, she shouldn't relax. After all, feelings don't last forever, and she shouldn't be too optimistic. Suddenly, Baby saw the Duke looking at her, and she wondered why he was standing there looking in her direction. The maid tells the mistress that she has brought tea and biscuits. She says that it looks very tasty and thanks them. Geoffrey turns to the master and says that everything is ready, and he agrees to go. And at that time he thought that they would see who would win. On the 5th day of house arrest, the Duke realized that he had no appetite at all. The butler says that he has taken the mail to the office, and the gentleman suggests talking because he knows what the matter is, and that he wants to tell him something. The man says that inspectors will come because of the incident 5 days ago. Upon hearing this, the gentleman says that this is again an annoying show. Edwin asks how the lady has been lately. He explains that today she also spent the whole day in her room. The Duke asks if she said anything about food. He explains that the lady still eats something simple. After this conversation, Edwin decided to visit his wife, and when he entered her room, he saw her sleeping on the sofa. The man looked at her and thought that she was stubborn, willful, and reckless, and this woman constantly made him worry. When the girl woke up, he said that staying indoors for too long was bad for your health, and the lady asks why he worries about it. After all, even if her health deteriorates or she finds herself in a dangerous situation, she is the one who will still disappear someday. The main character became interested in why the Duke, who is not her real husband, cares about her so much. The girl understands that Edwin is not that kind of person at all, and in the original, he is much colder and more indifferent. The lady does not understand why he is now behaving as if he is sincere, but he is worried about her, and this worries her. At this time, the Duke reflects on the fact that he does not understand why he is trying so hard for the sake of a fictitious marriage. The gentleman says that he does not like that there has been misunderstanding between them since the beginning of the marriage, and therefore he would like to clarify. After all, he's not as cold-blooded as she thinks, and so he cares what she thinks of him. And then he suggests that she look at him from another side. Edwin claims that she always suspects and fears his kindness, and therefore he does not understand her. And then he asks if she really wants to stay away from him and have nothing to do with him. However, he understands that a woman should not behave like that. The man stood up and left, and the girl shouted after him that she didn't find him disgusting. After all, she didn't understand why he was so worried about her. The gentleman wonders if it matters. After all, he only bothers her. The lady explains that she is not nice and disobedient to him, and he continues to give her more attention than necessary. The man says she is his wife, and so the reason is simple. And then he claims he needs her. Hearing this, the main character did not even expect to hear such words, and therefore was too surprised. But she believes that there is truth in these words. The next day of her 6th house arrest, Matushka says she is glad to see that her daughter-in-law looks healthy. Henri apologizes for not being able to visit and greet her earlier. The lady claims that there is no need to worry, as she must have a lot to do, and then reports that she heard from the butler what happened. Mother says that she wanted to come to her right away, but decided to observe the situation first. After all, she understands that with age, everything has its time. And at this time, she understands that if she heard that her son had disagreements immediately after the wedding, she would not like it. Madame says that there will be many moments in the future when she will not understand her husband. And then she says that now she understands why she is upset. Hearing this, the main character thought that she would probably be scolded now, and therefore she should be patient and listen to all this. The lady says that in relationships between people, there is no right answer, and sometimes You need to figure out who is right and who is wrong, and sometimes it is wiser to accept an extended hand. Mother says that even if she doesn't understand it now, the wisdom is to reach out and maintain the relationship. The young lady agrees with her and says that this is very good because she will remember the counsel that was intended for her. Madame says that she may have said something unpleasant, but thanks the young lady for listening to her. Henry claims that she was not offended at all. And the mother says that it seems to her that her son was very afraid that he would lose his wife. And then she says that she was also very worried about her because she loves her. The girl apologizes for making them worry, and at that moment, she thought that this lady is really very kind. And then she thanks her for her words. The next day, the Duke says she seems to be better, as she has left the room. The little girl says she is. Henry looked at her husband and then said that she was asking for forgiveness for yesterday. And he, surprised, asked why. The lady explains that she was rather harsh. After all, to be honest, she didn't say those words out of resentment. The man insists that everything is fine because he also behaved incorrectly and therefore believes that he should also ask for forgiveness. The young people looked at each other. After a short silence, he suggested that his wife speak first. The little girl gives him an envelope and asks him to read it, since a decision needs to be made as soon as possible. The Duke opened the envelope and saw an invitation to a picnic. It was to be a trip to the lake tomorrow as a way to improve relations between the spouses. Based on the above, it is suggested to take a walk to the lake to change the scenery, have a heart-to-heart talk, and dispel accumulated discontent. On the 7th day of house arrest, early in the morning, the Duke invites you into his room. The butler tells the gentleman that in the letter that came to the lady, there is a name that worries him, and so he thinks he should take a look. The gentleman saw the letter that Earl Evans had written, and he realized that the Queen was behind it. However, he became curious about what this meant, since it suggested that there was some kind of meanness behind it, and that it was not a good sign. The next day, the young master walked around very thoughtful, because he did not know what to do correctly. Because he wanted to protect his wife from this vile woman. The man understands that only he can protect his family and also be a support in difficult times. After all, he works very hard for this. The Duke reflects on the fact that he should put all his plans aside and devote his free time to his wife. The gentleman asks how the mistress is feeling. Chester replies that the lady is in a good mood. Edwin thought that he was pleased to hear such words, and he was ready to do anything to make his girlfriend happy. And at this time, the main character was interested in what dress she should wear today because it was very hot outside. The maid tells her mistress that she has prepared breakfast for her, but the girl refuses because she does not want to eat. At this time, Henry was thinking about how they would spend today's lunch. She wondered if she could say what she was thinking to her master. After all, her heart seemed to clench when she saw him. The girl believes that she has this feeling every day, and it seems to be getting stronger and stronger, and she thinks about this man all the time. However, she understands that it is good that she listened to her mother. The little girl can't wait for the hour when she will meet her husband, because she already knows what to offer him for a good time. The maid tells the lady that during the time she spent in the room, her skin wants the sun's rays, because she has become very pale, and then suggests that maybe her mistress is hopeful. Bonita thinks that it happens, and when a woman is expecting a child, then of course something begins to change in her body. And then she asks the lady who she would like more. Hearing this, the mistress was surprised because she did not even suspect that the maids were thinking about this. However, she understands that if a woman becomes pregnant, then this is natural. Henry thinks that children are a joy, and that she, as a woman, should give birth. But she wonders if the Duke is against it, because rumors are already circulating. The lady says that she would like both a boy and a girl, and if she is lucky, she will give birth to at least 6 children. The main character claims that everything is fine with her face, and she and her husband are working on this issue, and hope that there will be results soon.